Okay. Yeah. Hey. All right. Hey, so my wife and my son want to say hey. All right, this is Gigi.
Hi.
This is... Hang on.
Oh, it's really nice to meet you.
A pleasure.
What a beautiful family.
Yeah, well, our daughter Violet
I've heard
is...
a lot about both of you.
Yeah, our daughter Violet is somewhere, but she's shy. So, anyway.
Pleasure to meet you, and I'm glad that you're part of the group.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much. It's
Yeah.
been a very warm welcome.
Yes. All right. Thank you, baby. Can you shut the door? Or... Thank you. So, hey, that's how we decided to start. Yeah. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm me, and this is Meli. And you know who Meli is. Meli Grant. Welcome. Welcome to Apex. Welcome to Coffee and Donuts.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I've got my coffee here in the Apex mug that I got off of eBay since I couldn't find it for sale anywhere else.
Really?
Yeah.
Had to go to eBay?
I had to go to eBay. I wanted to get the biggest mug possibly find.
You're gonna start finding a lot of Apex swag is gonna find its way to you. Like some of it you have to look for, some of it will find its way to you. So this is a Pathfinder thermos, and it's metal. It's a metal straw, and this is.
Am I too quiet? Apparently, I'm too quiet.
You're too quiet.
I know my levels are up. So
All right.
I don't know if I on your end. You might be able to turn me up in Discord, right?
What if? Well, I can't. I don't think I can get your desktop.
Desktop audio is muted on this scene. Unmute it.
Unmute it.
Unmute
Okay.
desktop audio. There you go.
All right.
Hello. How about this?
It's probably-
Anyone?
You're probably too loud now. But all right, you guys let me know.
Bueller.
You guys let me know.
Hello.
Way better.
I am telling you for the first time about my incredible Apex mug that I
Yes.
got on eBay because I couldn't find it anywhere else.
Yeah, because a minute ago that was all in a silent movie. It's just, is she a mime? It's like, So I bought a Pathfinder costume for adults. It's basically a printed Pathfinder skin on a really comfortable tracksuit. And so they sent me like part of it for free, and then they just sent me this. So people are going to start sending you stuff as
boy.
Catalyst. That's.
Do you have a P.O. box?
I did, but this is just a merchant. So this wasn't, this was
Okay.
somebody you do business with. But yes, I did have a P.O. box. You might want to get one. You don't. I'll when we're off the air, I will tell you a secret about where I live. That if the public knew it, their heads would explode. But I can never share it because it would tip off where I live. And
You hear that, chat?
Yeah.
Chris Edgerly lives on the moon.
Yeah, so I'll share it with you because now you're part of the, you're a part of the family, and you would never reveal where I live. Of course, you'll be invited to the
where I
Christmas
live.
party and all that stuff if we have a Christmas party. We'll see. But anyway, yeah, in other words, this is a roundabout way of saying you're in a bigger world now. There's a lot of cool stuff. It's all great. Like the 1% of it is toxic douchebags. Not even 1%.
I've run into a little bit of that, but for the
Okay.
most part, it's been all love. By the way, donuts
Oh.
today.
Yeah.
I got the largest glazed monstrosity that I could find, but the cool thing is, it's super soft.
Is that even a donut?
I don't know. What is it? Twist?
It's
Listen.
Yeah, it's something. All right, all right.
I got a donut too. All right.
Okay.
If that disqualifies me, I have this
No,
glazed
it's all good.
cinnamony thing as well.
Breakfast pastry is fully admissible. This is chocolate, and because I do a poll, the Twitter poll, the winners were chocolate, whatever, and then surprise me. And my wife, for the first time, got the coffee and donuts. I usually go out and do it, but she was running an errand, so I said, "Okay, surprise me." So she got me jelly filled. So it's not sexy, but it is a surprise. I didn't expect it. So.
I saw the surprise me, and I was like, "Thank goodness, I can get whatever the hell I want."
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can get whatever the hell you want anyway. You're a legend now, and you're a guest, so guests do what they want.
They don't have many donuts on Clio.
No, yeah. Are those even a thing? That's we'll have We'll have to get into that. But all right. Well, I tell you what. Are you seeing the chat as I'm seeing the chat?
I am. If you see me look over here, it's because I'm looking at chat.
That's great. So let me go ahead and say my hellos for starters, because I have some regulars. And let's see, Sir Tamik, as always, you're first. Colorfinger, thank you as always for being our mod. Lord Woman, hello. King Guru, what's shaking? Cam, Transmora, hello. First time chat, welcome Transmora. Thank you for joining us. Wannabe Weeb. Some of these I love trying to pronounce some Twitch handles. Svipable. Lurk mode, hoping you're all having a good time. Lurk away. Svipival. And if I got that wrong, Svipival, let me know. But you're lurking, so Rabid, another lovely mod. Thank you for joining us. Pixie Rose, what's up? See, I don't have a huge community. I got a tight community, and I have enough people, just enough, where we're a crowd, but I have a small enough number where I can individually say hello to them. So,
I love it.
Feel free to do the same. You can talk right over me.
I dabbled for a little bit in streaming when I had like 4 people watching at any given time. Now I'm a little scared of it, but I'm interested to try at some point once I've got everything squared away. But it is really cool to see the same faces come through.
Yeah, you'll get more than 4. I'll go ahead.
Rabbit, yes, those are. I like to think of those as my 2 swords and my axe on the wall behind me.
Oh yeah, you do you play? You must play. You have a
very, very poorly.
Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah. I
love it though, and I keep it out because someday it'll inspire me to actually pick it up.
Okay, before we're done, chat, remind me, before we're done, I'll take my guitar and I'll try and play a chord or two. I only started in August because that was my birthday, and for my birthday, I asked for a guitar. And so I've been learning, and I'm doing an exercise where I have to play a chord. I have to change from one chord to the other. I've never done chord changes. They're terrifying. And it's, when you see me play, you'll understand why I'm scared of them. But it's fun to learn. So.
Yeah, I had a friend showing me some stuff on the bass and like just the amount of distance you had to make your fingers move.
Yeah.
He wanted me to go through just all of these scales up and down the neck, and it's exhausting, and I'm sure it gets easier, but I'm a coward.
No, it's I learned this. You just slowly but surely, a little bit at a time. It's like they say with golf, it's one hole at a time. Course management. You can't hit every shot all at once. You got to take the next, just one stroke at a time. So that's how you're going to learn guitar, how you learn anything.
Just like acting careers.
Yes. All right. Well, you know what? This dovetails with that. You were telling me just before we started, you obviously, you love being a part of this community. I can tell how much you embrace being a part of it. But you're also thinking, okay, you're thinking about building a community of your own, correct?
Yeah, I used to say, so I started out in anime. I got my BFA in drama in New York. I went to NYU. And then I took 10 years off and worked in tech and fixed a couple thousand computers because of some combination of this was pre-transition. And so there was a whole lot of figuring out that had to happen and internal tempest, but also just, fear of change and, fear of diving into the arts. So 10 years to the day after I got that job, I quit and I moved down to Dallas to start. And something that I always, and don't take this as the law, but I always felt like in order to build career momentum, 3 things had to happen every time you booked, at least in the anime world. I can't speak that much for video games yet.
Right.
You needed to book, period.
Yeah.
It needed to be a character of significance in that story. And the show, because so many anime shows release every season and only so many of them get heavily marketed. So you needed a book, it needed to be a character that mattered, and it needed to be a show that anyone gave a shit about. And so unless you ticked those 3 things off, you weren't going to see it didn't feel like I would see a tremendous amount of momentum. And so I'm often, I think possibly because I transitioned when I I told Chris right before the stream chat that like we weren't going to spend the whole time talking about transition, and now it's the only thing I want to talk.
Here comes 2 hours of donuts and transition talk.
Yeah. But you'll hear if you talk to people who have transitioned, it often people talk about it like you sort of go back to being a teenager all over again. You're like in puberty all over again, discovering things.
Boy, ain't that a good time.
Yeah, right. I also had the pressure of like having taken 10 years that I felt, even though they gave me a decent amount of savings to start building this career,
right.
It felt like I was 10 years taken away from the thing I wanted to be doing. So I always feel like I'm running for my life and like running out of time. So I'm always worried about momentum. Even with this, I'm thinking about what I can do next. And if you know me long enough, you'll know something I'm really bad at is stopping to like celebrate where I'm at.
Yes. That only makes you like literally almost every other actor or human, by the way. As soon as you said you feel like you're always running to catch up, I thought of two things. Number one, my wife grew up in Venezuela, and she said as a girl, she used to watch women in Venezuelan culture that she thought of as useless. That doesn't mean she thought all women were useless, but she saw women that only wanted to live within the cultural boundaries they were given. They wanted to just fulfill a very narrowly defined role, and they didn't want to think for themselves. And I think that, and I've told her this, I think that puts such a stamp on her brain that she says, I never want to be like that. And she is Mrs. Busy. She is always thinking of the next thing she can be doing. And I try to get her to chill. I try to get her on the couch, and she tries to get me off the couch. So she gets me to be more ambitious. I get her to, take a breath every now and again and enjoy it. And the other thing I thought of is Billy Joel has a song called Running on Ice. Mm-hmm. And it's very frenetic. The tempo of it, all of it is just crazy. And it's like everybody feels like they're running on ice. It's like I can't get enough done. And society is telling me I have to do all these things.
You're running as fast as you can, and you feel like you're making barely any forward momentum.
Exactly. Well, to your anime concern, I don't know the world as well, even though I've done some anime and I'm known for some of it. And right now I'm on an anime show on Netflix that I had no idea was popular until I came back to do season 2, and they said, oh, by the way, this is like the most popular anime show, first run anime show on Netflix that year. I thought, oh, okay.
What is it?
It's called Record of Ragnarok.
Oh, yeah, I've heard a lot about that.
So, yeah, I'm Zeus in that. Just he's a crazy, well, everything in anime is crazy. Everything in anime is just the most intense, fucked up thing you've ever seen. And, you gotta love it. Well, Zeus is basically that. He's insane, which makes it a lot of fun to play. But anime is very, very volume oriented. You gotta do a lot of it, right? Yeah. Because, the thing is that there's an unending supply of it. So I made... I made my career just by doing a bunch of things. I was never usually the lead on anything big. I was always just a part of something, and I got to be a part of a lot of different things because I have a lot of range, so I'm like a utility knife. So there are different ways to make a career. Some people are known for one thing. Some people are known for doing like what I do. There's no right or wrong way. I think if you're talented,
when I talk about it, because I have played some characters that have been very, very far from my natural, the core of my range.
Right.
Catella, the god of destruction of Universe 4 in Dragon Ball Super. If anyone has seen Dragon Ball Super, that's me.
Okay.
And he's this tiny little gremlin mouse of a guy that kind of sounds like this.
Right.
And And those roles happen, but I've never gone into this, and maybe it's my theater background, but I've never gone into this career looking to create a voice or relishing in creating something outside of myself. More often than not, when I jump into a role, I start with what's like right at my core in my chest, unless there's something that I see on the screen, something that just leaps out at me and makes me realize there needs to be something very different here. Like, especially if it's a humanoid character. And maybe this is because I come from a background where I've been told tons of times that my voice doesn't fit in, especially in the anime world, and we can talk about that in a second. That I think probably maybe as a defense mechanism, I often start in my normal range these days, because if I can make that work and they like that, that's incredibly gratifying for me.
Oh, sure. Plus, I remember a director told me, because for years, like I started making my name in video games in the early aughts. So 02, 03, 04, I was doing a metric ton of games. If you look at my IMDb, the bulk of them happened in that first 5 to 10 years. And there's a lot of these games are just bloodthroat games. They're just screaming and shrieking. And I remember a director telling me, he says, I have actors tell me, God, my throat is all ragged out. I don't know how to protect it. And he said, you start protecting it on your audition. When you audition, when you see the intense stuff there, you need to audition not at your peak, because they may ask you to do that for 4 hours.
Go further.
Yeah. Do it at
I've
a
done
pace
auditions
you
where
know
I
you
found
can
a character
sustain.
voice that I thought sounded great, and by the time I was sitting there looking at it in the email,
Yeah.
I nixed it, and I said, nope, actually, I do not want to do this voice ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a couple of actors that have had the nodule surgery to get them removed because they were very busy. But it's you know, your body is your instrument, and so are your vocal cords, and voiceover, thankfully, is a business you can be in for a long, long time. They don't care what you look like. They don't care how old or young you are. It's, can you do the part? And, you know, if you can keep your voice pristine as possible, you can sound like the same person today that you'll sound like in 20 years. So,
I hope so.
Yeah.
That was one of the challenges that I ran into jumping into anime first. And I kind of felt like I had one arm tied behind my back, because I transitioned a couple years earlier. And so when I first jumped in, I actually went through a phase where I had to figure out, like, how do play female roles, because I'd never done that before.
Right.
And so, you know, I was trying to find other voice actors that I felt like were in a similar range to where my voice was now, and try to model myself after them. But something I noticed that happens very frequently in the anime world is that they frequently have these rigid ideas of like what these archetypes have to sound like looks like this, has glasses, must sound like this. And I, you know, for better or worse, I've gotten into a few arguments over the course of my time in the anime world, where people tend to pretend that there are these rules about how things have to sound until the moment that's inconvenient, and then the rule book goes out the window.
Right.
And so oftentimes my defense when someone will say, you know, it's hard to find something, you know, it's hard to find a place. I never really got, sounds like I'm patting myself in the back, but I never really got criticisms for my work as a performer. Oftentimes I felt like the work I was doing, people found riveting, but then there would be that addendum on the end of like, it's just so hard to find something that fits your voice. And my response to that has always been, I feel like you just need more exposure to it. And then eventually you'll get used to it. And then eventually you'll start wanting to hear it in things. I hope.
Well, I think that goes for a lot of things. A writer once told me, you know, if you want to sell a screenplay, you have to remember that the industry wants different the same. So they want to riff on something they already know. They're not known, except for Apex, which is kind of groundbreaking with the scope of its cast and the makeup of its cast. But most industry across entertainment is extremely risk averse. And so I think you're onto something there. Just dip your toe in it. You'll get used to it, and you'll realize it's not a big deal. And then people will realize, well, you know, it really is more about the performance, isn't it?
Well, and especially in the, I've seen plenty of times in the anime world where they would say, if you had kind of like your core, like most common archetypes, which is like, you know, your young, high pitched, like, you know, teeny bopper girls, and like your deep, you know, open, smooth voiced male characters, etc. there's a tendency for people to preach about how important it is that we match the original Japanese performance as closely as possible. And that's the reason given for why it has to be just so. And that lasts about as long as you get to a character that has like a woman with a deeper voice or a more androgynous character. And then suddenly I've seen those same people turn around and say, well, it really should just be about the performance, shouldn't it? As an excuse to then sort of continue to cast those same people they're comfortable casting rather than having to look outside of what they're used to. And I have to imagine that there are people, and this isn't me pitching, saying that I should be a leading anything, but I have to imagine there are people that have voices that are now considered like leading man, leading woman voices that when they first started probably had a similar situation where maybe they were a little raspier than usual or a little more nasal than usual, and people probably didn't know what to do with them until they did, and then they wanted nothing but that.
Well, no, you're right. Somebody once described the political press as youth soccer. And I said, what do you mean? It's like, well, have you ever seen a kid's soccer game? Wherever the ball is, it doesn't matter what position the kid is, they all jump on it. And it's just everybody follows the ball all around the field. And that's the political press. Whatever's going on, let's all jump on it. And that's kind of like the industry that we're in as well. Whatever's hot, that's what you're going to see in the breakdowns for a couple of years. I've been in long enough to have some perspective. Back around 03, 04, every commercial breakdown for a man was, we want a Will Ferrell type. And then we want a Vince Vaughn type. And then we want a Will Arnett. And then we wanted this or that. It's whatever is the flavor. They're going to chase it. And it eventually, the flavor is going to come around and it's going to be in your advantage. You just have to have the right timing. You know, if you're around long enough, you build a career on that.
It's one of the things I've loved coming into and coming into the video game world in particular. They've definitely been more interested in a woman that has my vocal range, where in anime it's been a lot of we're not quite sure where it fits. I've definitely run into a lot of situations in video game studios where it's, ooh, we like that, more of that, please. And you know what? Not to say that I wouldn't love to do more anime or try my hand at more prelay, in American cartoons, but I like working with people who want to work with me, and if there are studios that like what I'm doing and want that and enjoy my company and like collaborating with me, those are going to be a lot more fun than trying to force myself into the room with a studio that doesn't really want anything to do with me.
Well, how much of it do you think is the elephant in the room, that you're trans, that they're just not ready yet? Do you have to push back against that a lot, or is it less of a thing than people would think? I like to ask a question while you're chewing so that really I can make it as awkward as possible when you try to answer. So, mission accomplished.
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
I guess
there's a lot of paranoia because there are times when I've had this conversation regarding younger male roles, because when I first dipped my toes into voiceover, before I actually jumped in 10 years later, I was grabbing male sides, and I would grab like these young kind of scrappy guys.
Right.
And it's interesting to see that there are so many iconic young male roles that are played by women. Yeah. In the States, even more so in Japan. For some reason, those roles will come over here and they'll cast men rather than sticking to that original vision. And so there are actors. Romy Park is one of them, a Japanese seiyuu who almost every role she's touched is like my wheelhouse. But when her stuff comes over here, they slice it in half. And if it was a male role, it gets handed to a man instead for whatever reason. They think that's what we want here. And maybe they're right. Who knows? But, so when that precedent is there and I struggle, which I have, to book male roles, I've been told that I sound too feminine, which is hilarious because it's like the opposite of the conversation I would expect to be having in the room as someone who's transitioned female. Yeah. What am I trying to say? I'm getting lost. I try to assume positive intent. I do wonder sometimes if maybe they're worried about offending me, so maybe they don't want to offer a male role because they're worried that I'll take offense to that, or maybe they don't want to offer me a female role because they think I sound too something. Right. And so, is that bigotry? Is that ignorance? Is that, oversensitivity? I have no idea. I'm just trying to like pay my bills and like
Yeah.
continue to tell stories.
Well, I told my wife once after a phone call, I said, baby, if you weren't neurotic before you got into show business, it'll make you neurotic. And just without that extra layer that you're having to consider, there are so many. I mean, you knew this when if you were getting a fine arts degree, you already had contemporaries that were ready to make the plunge, and you were all dealing with uncertainty. You already have so many chances to second guess yourself. And now you've had this extra layer, and yeah, who knows what's actually going on? And at a certain point, I guess you just tell yourself, you know what? I can focus on what I can control. That's going to be my interpretation of the copy, my performance, and they can take it or leave it.
Yeah. And so the battle you're constantly fighting is trying, like, I want to make sure that I'm not being complacent as well.
Yeah.
So like, I don't have control. If they don't want to cast me because something, and maybe it has to do with me being trans or sounding a little bit more androgynous or whatever, I can't control that, but also I have to try to go into it with my eyes open because
Right.
I can do the best work I can do. And I guess maybe what that comes down to is letting myself off the hook if I go through a bad streak, because on some level I have to recognize that I probably am playing on hard mode in a game that's already incredibly hard. I mean,
Yeah.
shit, how much can I curse? I won't drop F-bombs.
Well, you can curse all you want. It's an adult stream.
Right out the gate at NYU, one of the first things that I had to contend with as someone who, is now in a tremendous amount of debt in order to go to a school like that,
Yeah.
is I had peers that right after they graduated, their family just paid for an apartment, paid all of their bills so they could just be living in the city, and pounding the pavement and working on their acting careers with absolutely no burdens or anything they needed to take care of outside of that. And I had to work 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
I worked 40 hours a week for 10 years. And at a certain point, I was just too exhausted to bother trying.
Right.
And I had friends that were much better at that. One of my coworkers, there was this woman that did leatherworking. I had so much envy and so much admiration for her drive, because she would show up in the morning, arms stained with different dyes and stains and stuff, like couldn't even like throw herself through the shower, got to work, worked 8 hours, went home, and then would be up until 3 a.m. continuing to work. I would get home and just have to fall over on the bed, and it was just too exhausting.
People are just wired differently. My wife immigrated here. She got married. She moved here, realized, all right, that was not a good idea, that marriage. That was her starter marriage. Then she learned the language here. So she basically learned her English by just being around Americans, and got any job she could find, worked whatever hours she could, brought the rest of her family here. She would make up qualifications just to get hired, and then figure everything out on the spot before they discovered, oh, she lied to us, but she's actually really good. And then,
like that, I can't do that.
Yeah, and this is without being able to hardly speak the language. Well, I couldn't do any of that either. And she gradually she just wasn't going to be stopped. And meanwhile, I, on the other hand, get pissy if I don't get 7 hours of sleep. And, I like comfort, and I like to push myself, but I see the way some people are just having extra gear. And I think you can you can turn yourself into a driven person. I'm a big believer in that. I've done cognitive behavioral therapy, so I'm a big believer in changing your wiring, but it's work. Your natural inclinations are very powerful. Look at that spam phone call. I should take the spam phone call here on the stream.
Yeah,
As Pathfinder. Hi, friend. No, I'm not going to do that.
No, I would not like to sign up for your newsletter.
Yeah. Piss off, Scablander.
So that's brought me to two places. One, I went for so long, and I still do. So I mentioned before that I constantly feel like I'm running for my life, and I feel like it's one of those things where like both things can be true. I have that feeling, but I also can like bird's eye view look down on that and recognize that behavior is happening.
You're aware.
So, I often feel like I wasted 10 years of my life doing that. But I also have to recognize that that gave me, I was single. I don't have a child.
Right.
So that gave me the savings to when I moved down to Dallas. We can decide later if Dallas was a good move in the long run or if I should have come straight to LA. But, I made a judgment call. I knew my savings would stretch a lot further in Texas. And so that gave me the savings to be able to not have to work 40 hours a week and put all of my time and focus into building a platform for my career. So there's a silver lining to that too.
Yeah.
But also when I talk to fans or to other actors who are asking, how can I get started? Like, I don't even know where to begin. And I'm working, 40 to 60 hours a week and I just don't know how to get it done. I may not have the right answer for that, but I have so much empathy because, it's hard. It's so hard to put that kind of time and effort into something wholly irrelevant to your passion and then try to still scrape up the energy to move forward with that career.
Yeah.
Whew.
Well,
Been there.
Yeah. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, as they say. My therapist, may he rest in peace, Dr. Applegate, I like to reference him often. He said, here's how you deal with the past. You recognize it's set in concrete and you can't change it, and you separate the lesson from the experience. Because I could beat myself up about my past as well. And I could realize all the mistakes I made and thought, if only I would have done this at that time, look at all the trouble I would save myself. But he said, separate the lesson, all right, you learned, and now separate it from the experience. Realize the experience is set. You can't change it, but you did learn. And I look at my life, and I think you're going to do the same thing. I have an absolutely wonderful partner. I have 2 beautiful children. I met her exactly when I needed to meet her. Because if I had met her earlier, I would have ruined that. I would have screwed that up. If I'd met her later, I might have found someone else. I am absolutely where I am. And at any point leading up to meeting her, I was on a journey. And if I had at any of those moments on that journey thought, geez, if only things would have turned out differently, I would be somewhere else. Yeah, I'd be somewhere where I wouldn't get a chance to meet my lovely wife and have my 2 beautiful children. So things happen the way they did. And I'm not one of those guys that says everything happens for a reason. I believe you turn the things that happen into your reason and you get meaning that way. So I don't know. I think someone as aware as you are probably going to come to the same conclusion.
I believe that. You might not have been ready for where you are now back then. And, working in customer service for 10 years, that's given me some tools that others might not have in this career. I get scared out of my wits in classes for some reason, but
Really?
I go into studios and it's fine. I've gotten to this place. I don't know if it's like experience or being jaded or if it's 10 years in customer service, but I'm not scared by big directors or producers or, walking into Warner Brothers last week was cool at best. I wasn't wasn't frightened by that at all.
Right.
Dutch was great.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with my peers where there are things that freak them out. They're worried about saying the wrong thing. They think I'm crazy for saying that they should like drop a joke or a little bit of humanity in an email rather than it being just this like clinical, like to whom it may concern. Is that age? Is that, been burnt enough times that you no longer care? I don't know.
Well, if you did customer service for 10 years, I mean, I had 15 jobs in my life before it was only entertainment. From the time I was like 17 to the time I was about 26, 15 different jobs, bouncing around. One of them was customer service at a mall. The customer service kiosk, you're just dealing with the public. And I was always pretty good at dealing with the public. But you realize after a while, like you said, drop a little bit of humanity into the equation. Why does everything have to be so sterile, so formal? And especially customer service, they probably give you a script. And you think, if I follow this script, I'm going to get another unsatisfied customer because they're already angry at having to call me. They're already pissed off.
It's those moments where someone comes in with a computer that's like, a moment away from being on fire. Yeah. And they're expecting that like, well, I can certainly understand how you might be frustrated about this. And I want you to know that I'm going to do everything I can to try and resolve this issue for you. And instead you just say, wow, that sucks.
Yeah.
I've had people across from me give like a frustrated laugh, but
Yeah.
then there's like a moment of humanity there, and there's a reassurance that like, listen, we're both in this. This is hilarious. I'm
Yeah.
still here to try and help you. Now let's figure it out.
Yeah. I have found when I've been on the phone, first of all, these days on the phone, if you get a person, you're already way ahead of the game. I mean, usually it's AI of some kind.
Representative.
Yeah, exactly. Representative motherfucker. Oh, wait, you're recording this. Okay. Deep. A lot of times, well, first of all, when you get a person that's really good at the job, you realize, okay, I'm in pretty good hands. They're going to make this really good. Or maybe it's just the beginning of their shift. But sometimes, yeah.
Early burnt yet.
Yeah, maybe it's just the first 8 minutes of the shift. But sometimes I find that I'm almost performing a little customer service with them. I will go out of the way to let them know that I know they've got a hard job, and I'll be extra friendly because maybe they needed that from me so that they could do their job better and help both of us. So I think sometimes we flip the script and think, okay, I'm pissed off and they really should help me out here. But think about that poor person on the other end. I guarantee you they're not getting paid enough. So
I really like, I've watched these shorts recently on YouTube, and it's the Nicholas Crown shorts, like rich versus really rich. Have you seen those?
no, but now I got to look for them.
And so it's him playing both characters as well as all of like the other characters. And so,
Right.
you know, the rich character is really petulant, very insecure, and is constantly like trying to flaunt his success.
Right.
And the one thing I noticed with his characterization of like the really rich character is they're always listening and trying to like give love and like express concern and express humanity and, you know, try and not ask too much and be very, you know, and there's humility and there's generosity there. And
Right.
that's been, at least for me, like the big takeaway of some of those videos is less about, you know, the confidence of having money and more about like the return of just being a decent human being to other
Yeah.
people and like giving back as much or more as you get.
Yeah. I interviewed an historian for my podcast, and I don't even know what to call what the hell it is I do anymore. Is it, you have a podcast? It's like, well, I video interview people, but yeah, sometimes I save the audio and make it this or that. It's like I chatted with, interviewed an historian. I haven't posted it yet. But
Historian.
Yes, I say an historian because I'm an English minor, and that's how you correctly start an H word with an "and," not an "a." Yeah, I know. I've tuned out half of the audience now. He's good. He's a grammar Nazi. Click. Somewhere else. So he talked to me about, he lives in the southwest of England. He talked about a family that down the street has lived in the same house for 800 years. So it's more
One
of an
family has been there for 800 years.
Yeah.
What is
yeah.
the secret to that life?
What are they, vampires? No, the family is just down the line. Now, it started with a
wasn't
large piece
expecting
of property. Yeah.
Sorry, no, continue.
Here's the patriarch. By the way, you're his feast.
You're wet.
Yeah.
Come in out of the cornstarch.
Right. Very good. Very sinister. Take two. Give me 3 in a row. So
Right,
they,
Mucklucks by the cellophane.
Yeah,
Did you ever
exactly.
watch Nick Danger, Firesign Theater, or listen to?
Oh,
Sorry, I'm derailing you.
no, not that we're actors. We derail everything. I know Phil Proctor. He was Nick Danger. He was a client at the same agency as me. I'm sitting here talking to this living legend all the time over in the waiting room of the office back in the day. But anyway, the historian told me about this family that had been on that land for 800 years down the generations, and the current patriarch was planting oak trees, the seeds for oaks, I guess the acorns, because they're not going to mature for another 190 years. And the reason why I bring that up is it reminded me of this comment about society. Society will thrive when people plant trees, the shade under which they know they will never sit. They simply think forward. They think about doing things for people that come after them. They think about the other person. And you can do this in microcosmic ways. I'm a big believer in connection. I think it's the strongest force there is. And sometimes to connect, all you need to do is smile at somebody when you sense they may be having a bad time. All you need to do is, if you get to the door first, hold it open. Doesn't matter. You know, just be the person that holds the door and lets everybody go first. Be the person that lets everyone get off the damn elevator. Just be a human. And maybe if you're lucky, somebody will do that for you when you're having a bad day. And it's, think about the shade of trees you're never going to sit in. You're still doing the right thing.
I think about that a lot when it comes to activism and advocacy as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on the most immediate level, this character, and hoping
Right.
that having, you know, Catalyst be front and center as a playable trans woman in a AAA video game. What?
Yeah.
Like, how often does that happen? Not often, but hopefully this is the start of demonstrating, I mean, two
Right.
things. And if you've been here in streams with me before, you've probably heard me say this, but having, I'm looking at the chat like they can see me back through that window. You know, the hoping that she serves as a proof of concept that trans and other queer stories are welcome and wanted, and
Right.
that the community is interested in them, and like
Right.
in the cynical way, like that they'll make you money. And in fact, if you represent people, you'll make even more money by telling authentic stories. And also that queer actors are valid and can work at just the same high level, you know, just as high a level, and be just as competitive professionally.
Right.
I botched that a little bit. Hopefully that made sense.
No,
You know,
it's okay.
that, but also I've thrown myself in front of so many studio buses in the past. I've written studios and producers about trans roles that were being miscast to try and see if there was a way that they could be handled responsibly before it goes to air.
Right.
I've been a part of getting roles recast because they were not going to the right actor, and they needed to be cast representatively. I've had cases where they ignore me, and I had one case recently that was wonderful where they actually took my, you know, 2-hour painful, awkward, uncomfortable phone call to heart, and they recast the role. You know, and there's always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, I just shot any chance of working with that studio in the foot. But, you know, hopefully whether or not they, you know, strike me from the records and try to avert eyes and avoid contact at all costs, like hopefully this is making things just a little bit better for people that come after me, so it's not always a fight going forward.
Well, I mean, with the benefit, and one thing I talked to the historian about is history gives us perspective. So we can look back and see what's come before us. And we can see, especially in this society, some things take time. My wife is a woman of color. She's Black, Latina, European. She's many different things. But I know for a fact, because it's on record, I grew up in Georgia. 50 years ago, after both of us had been born, our marriage would have been illegal in that state. It is absolutely insane for you and me to think about the fact that there is a state, and there were more than one of them, that literally outlawed the idea of two people of different races, because race is a silly construct that scientifically scientists will tell you is meaningless. But because of how she looked and how I looked, they would have made that illegal. You give it time, and people, there are still a few fucksticks down there that would have a problem with it, but they don't matter anymore. They've been marginalized, which is where that attitude belongs.
Society, you need to fight.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
People need to fight, as people need to fight, and
Yes.
It's terrifying, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
You know, and when I got on that call with the production team for this one particular role, it was one of the scariest things I've ever done. And I had a number of people I wanted to have with me, and they sent back an email saying, "Let's start with just you." I felt like I was showing up to a firing line. But if people don't, and the, you know, the example of Georgia and interracial marriage is so much is like such a more critical issue than casting an anime character. Let's be real, but. In both cases,
But
those
these things
kinds of
add up.
conflicts don't happen if people don't get in there and fight for it.
Right. Yeah. Like, and this is not to make less of what you're going through, because what you're going through is existential, right? So people need to look at this on a realistic timeline. You never get everything you want when you want it, and the really hard things are always a fight. And I am sitting in the shade of a tree that people planted decades ago for me to enjoy, and I'd never lose sight of that. My wife still to this day can feel judgment sometimes, and we're in California. So even now, there are pockets where sometimes she feels like, you know what, I feel like I'm glad you're standing next to me, because you don't realize that the road is a little bit more paved for you sometimes. And I would have never had that vantage point had I not had her in my life. I would have blissfully walked between many, many raindrops, not knowing.
Yeah.
So keeping your ears open to hear other people's stories lets you know that you're not the only one here, and other people are going through things you cannot imagine. And hopefully, you know, when, like you say, if something is worth fighting for, you got to fight for it. And you also have to realize that I may not be lucky enough to enjoy all the fruits of this. I might be the first wave, but if you can somehow imagine the people coming after you are going to benefit, you know, you're the shade that they get to sit in, which is not to say that you're not going to have some successes, because look at where you are already, AAA game, right? That's something.
Yeah, one of the reasons that a lot of that plays into one of the reasons why I started to be more out publicly.
Yeah.
Let's be real. I've had a very privileged transition experience. I grew up in New York. When I came out, my family was incredibly supportive of me. My friends, my workplace was incredibly supportive of me. I had friends that were there to, you know, my workplace at the time, insurance took care of the care that I needed.
Really?
Which is something a lot of people don't have access to.
Yeah.
Although, like a little caveat, to be fair, it was reimbursement. It was not covered up front, which means that even with that insurance, I needed to have a certain level of security to be able to go forward with it just to get the reimbursement.
Right.
But, you know, I was able to change my name and my gender markers and my birth certificate, and they locked that away, which means I get to now lie to the government all the time legally when they ask me questions about, like, have you ever had a license under another name? And that's incredible. And I have friends who've been in so many other versions of the trans experience. I have a friend who grew up in, I want to say, New Jersey. I hope I'm not getting the state wrong. People can fact check me on this, but he grew up in a state where, even though he was working in New York and was still part of a culture that was very inclusive, he happened to grow up in a state where just legally can never change his birth certificate or gender markers. Maybe it wasn't
Right.
New Jersey. I have to double check. But like something like that, where in very tangible ways his life is impacted negatively, even though socially he's just fine. But I have friends that have been thrown out of their parents' house and don't have a relationship with their families anymore. There are trans women, especially trans women of color, that are constantly the victims of assault. Trans people get murdered, and then the media tries to spin it like we're the aggressors and the predators. You know, like even someone like me who's had a very privileged transition experience can't flip on the television or listen to like a news podcast without people having some opinion about me, broadly speaking, and it gets
Right.
exhausting.
Yeah.
So when I transitioned with the goal of never ever having to talk about it again. And just being completely under the radar, and no one would ever know, and I could just live my life. You know, there's a term, it's a little problematic, but in the trans community we call it stealth. And it would be great. You know, maybe I could just slip into show business as a woman with a deep voice.
Right.
And then over the years, I've started to talk to more and more queer actors, and I've been a part of queer communities, and I've met other trans voice actors that don't see, you know, examples of trans women or trans men or non-binary actors working in show business, and so they're not sure if they fit in somewhere, if there's a place for them too, which is something that I've been through. And super long story short, you know, I started to realize the impact of my visibility and how necessary that was, even if it was something that maybe in my bones I wasn't really interested in doing. And so by talking to more people and having more, you know, aspiring trans actors in my life, I realized how much good, I guess, I could be doing by being out there and talking about it and having conversations like this, rather than just like hiding under the blankets and hoping no one looks at me.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, for the most part, it's been nothing but love. There have been a few shitheads. I've gotten a few stupid death threats, especially since the announcement. But yeah, it I don't know. Did that make any sense? It's the
No,
exposure
sure.
to other actors and realizing that like there need to be people that are brave enough to be out there visible and serve as an example for others to look to. And like eventually I just had to get over my
Right.
fears and actually talk about this shit.
Well, also, this is
150,000 words I could have said in probably like 220.
If your recap of your experience came out in a perfectly wrapped soundbite, it just wouldn't feel as real. It would feel like, okay, this is the 8 millionth time I've had to answer this question, so I've crafted this public statement. It's like, no. There was a moment, it
was very like Jon Snow. There was a moment where I was reckoning with that visibility, and I was just like, I don't want this. I don't want people looking at me.
Yeah.
I don't want to use my pronouns places. Like, go away. And eventually I was like, okay, all right. Well, I probably need to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I come from I grew up in a very conservative part of the country, socially speaking, very conservative. For a while, that's kind of, I was never that socially conservative, but you are a product of much of your environment. But I was always kind of an outlier, you know. Actors, performers, I was a stand-up comedian for 10 years after college. We're always on a different wavelength anyway. But the one thing I learned is that even, you know, the shitheads who do and say nasty things, on the inside, there's usually some pain there. Well, not even usually. There's always some pain there. They haven't reckoned with it. A person does themselves so many favors by just sort of listening to what another person is going through. And if people are having a hard time with, you know, new voices coming up and new experiences being portrayed, instead of just immediately judging it, why not take some time and watch and listen to the stories of the people who are behind those voices? Why not discover why they are who they are, how they got there? And believe me, there are a lot of people out there my age that don't get this. I know they don't get it. A lot of these are the people that are making these nasty comments. And my advice to them is, dude, I understand, but why don't you just shut up for a bit and listen without judging and understand why a person does what they does in life. And I guarantee they're not doing it just to fuck with you. It ain't about you. People aren't out there just trolling you. They're living their lives.
Yeah, I think that exposure really helps. And I hope, you know, that as we have these, it can be exhausting because you're usually working like one person at a time. And then the next person comes in with that same first question. And you're like, oh my God.
I have to start over.
Yeah.
I got to start this all over again. Yeah.
It's why you see those stories of like those really conservative politicians who suddenly they find out like their child is gay and they've had huge awakening because it's like they finally have exposure and realize that like it's a real person.
This is a person. Yeah. This is
not like this fiction or this horror story that they've been told by you know the media they listen to. Like there's actually a person with feelings and needs and pain and trauma, and like that empathy suddenly just appears because they're in your life. Not always. Like I said, I have friends that have been thrown out of their families' houses, but by and large, that misconception that like something in the water in the cities makes everyone liberal. It's like, no, there's just a lot of people from different backgrounds who are actually sharing a space and talking to each other. Yeah. And suddenly you realize, oh, we're actually all cool with each other here and life is fine. You know, like
we all get equally pissed off that the subway is late. Yeah. You know, we all hate this show, or we all love this thing, or we all like this kind of deep dish or thin crust pizza or whatever. And the other stuff is incidental. It is not, I mean, it's touchy-feely, but it is true. We're just humans here. And every human being is just trying to live their lives. And yes, there are trolls out there from all over the place who, it's a personality thing. Some people just like messing with other people. But again, why would a person do that? You know, they're in some sort of pain. They're in some sort of pain. I actually
having conversations with people like that, by the way, and it's interesting, especially when you approach people who would come at you with ill intent, just as a rational person, and you try to have a normal conversation. How quickly like the conversation ends. I cannot tell you how many comment sections I've jumped into where like the thread dies after I leave a reasonable, like well thought out response, and like no one has anything to say anymore because I'm not just getting angry and fighting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That I just call it talking in good faith. If you're here,
That or they'll blast back something trite. Like I'll come in with like a reasonable statement and someone will be like, well, you're a pedophile. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going anywhere.
yeah, we're in a cul-de-sac already. I actually noticed an interaction you posted on Twitter with somebody that was angry that you were, you're shoving this in our face. And you basically rightly pointed out, you sought me out, right, to complain about something I was doing. I didn't direct it at you. You can just not look at my feed or not watch this or that. It's like every time someone thinks something is being shoved in their face, that's usually never the case. It's usually they went looking for a reason to be pissed off. And again, if you don't like something, fine, you don't have to like it, but you need to accept that it's here and it's just, really none of your business. So don't worry about it.
That same person came back. And they said something like, you're asking me to accept that it's normal. The topic for people in the chat that haven't seen this particular tweet was like, the idea that someone having their pronouns in their Twitter bio is like shoved in your face.
Yeah.
And then they said something like, you're asking me to accept, like, if someone comes into the room with, like, facial piercings all over their face, that, like, that's normal. And I'm like, that comparison is wild to me. And I've had friends like that before.
Right.
I'm going to drag up some dirt. I'm not going to drop any names. But I had a former friend who, sadly, I don't associate with anymore, who made a comment once, and it stuck with me forever, because I've seen so many examples of this, where they said something like, I don't understand. Now, I just want to preface this by saying, like, this is someone else's perspective that I was in an argument with. And they said, I don't understand how, two women can be kissing each other and like, I just have to deal with that. But like, I can't, shout a slur at someone without people coming down on me. And it was so hard it was impossible to get this person to understand that in that example, you have two people that are just existing, living their lives, minding their own business, and you who are actively aggressing them with your words, if nothing else. Those are not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination. You can't treat those like they're equally harming each other. You inserted yourself into their life. They didn't even know you were there. How are you using this as a comparison?
I know. People tend to be, we can't, a lot of us just can't help it. We're a little bit solipsistic. We experience the world through our experience of it. Everything is referenced back to our egos. And a lot of times we don't notice that we're making something about us that is not about us. Another person is near you and they're just being a person. Their way of being a person may not jibe with your way of being a person, but you know what? Why don't you be a grown-up and realize that, to each their own. I hate to reduce this to these little bromides, but if we could start with just that simple idea. It's like, you know what? I don't, there are a lot of things in life, I have to stand next to somebody wearing a Mets cap and I'm a Braves fan. And I know you're probably a Mets fan. Yeah. Damn it. All right, that's it. Fuck it, Meli. I can't take it.
I'm not a real Mets fan.
That's the last straw. All right, so no. But the whole point is that, you know what? So what? I don't care if you're uncomfortable standing next to a Mets fan. By the way, I have nothing against the Mets. I'm making a poor analogy. The point being is that, so what? Why don't you be an adult and let them be? And this will sound so trite. It's sports fan, trans person's like, no, they're not the same thing. But the idea starts with, why don't you just let another person be another person? And whether you're comfortable or not comfortable with it, why don't you be polite? Because politeness and manners are the lubricant of society, right? It allows the engine of society to function without breaking down. Why don't you just exhibit a little courtesy and everything will be cool? How about that?
And I don't have an issue with facial piercings either, but it is fascinating to me. It
Yeah.
spoke to me that if you're equating a she, her in someone's profile with someone's, in their example, face being covered with piercings, that speaks to me how loud and like how sensitive you are to that, and how much that little minuscule 2 words on someone's profile is impacting you. It's
Right.
fascinating to me, and I also feel so bad. Like I my heart goes out to you that this is something that causes you so much pain, and I wish I could help you with that, because it's insane to me. But
Right.
you know, but it does speak to like how, I guess, how sensitive they are to something like that. It's wild. It's wild.
Well, here on the chat, every now and then I like to reference the chat. Lord Woman says, the biggest problem with that is there's so many different cultures and each have their own idea of what manners are. Fair point, Lord Woman. I will start with the universal idea of manners, as is, never try to make another person feel uncomfortable. That's basic manners.
By the way, Lord Woman is fantastic.
I know. Lord Woman is that's sort of a AAA name right there. My idea of manners is, I have a couple of manners books because I am a big believer in them. I don't think you should completely subsume your own personality just to be polite. You have to still give yourself room to be you. But manners are important because they involve honesty. Don't lie to people, right? Be honest with them so they know where they stand with you. Be considerate of them. Think of them. And show them respect. It's very simple. Now, that's universal. I don't care what culture you're in. Being truthful, being considerate, and just simply being respectful, that's valued in every culture. If everyone could simply make an attempt to do that, then you can still exist while you're uncomfortable with other people. Because it's silly to think that everyone's just going to immediately be comfortable with something that they don't know much about. But if they can use manners and say, how about I not judge, and I sit back and I show them courtesy and consideration and respect, that'll give me a chance to get to know them and to get to know this whole idea. And
That's
with
what
that, what's that?
That's what it comes down to, is that empathy.
Yeah.
And wanting the people around you to feel safe and comfortable and to be able to show respect to people.
Yeah.
I struggled, for other trans and non-binary folks in the audience today, I struggled forever with the pronouns thing, because I transitioned specifically so that people wouldn't ask me that ever again. You know, I wanted to get myself to a place where if people guessed, they guessed right. And that was incredibly euphoric for me. And so when I started to, you know, interface with other trans and non-binary folks, and we ended up in situations where like we would all lead with our pronouns or put pronouns in tags, I hated it, because it brought me back to that dysphoric place of feeling like people were asking me like what I was. Mm. But I'm also a pretty irreverent person. I've got a thick skin. You know, I'm emotionally mature and comfortable with who I am.
Right.
And so eventually I had to do this calculus and say, all right, because the gut instinct is like, why don't my feelings matter as well? And eventually I had to realize that, okay, I know, push come to shove, I can do pronouns and it's not going to be that much skin off my back. Mm-hmm. And I have to take people at their word and trust that if this is something that's incredibly fulfilling for you, or if it you know, or if the lack of that interaction is painful for you, I have to trust you and trust that you're not lying to me. And
right.
So if I do that math, I realize it's a lot easier for me to come to the middle and compromise if I know that it's going to make you feel more comfortable and be fulfilling to you. And if you're telling me that it's something that you need, and I know that I can deal with it, then that's the answer, is that I can adjust and I can get used to it and I can be okay with that. You know, but that was an adjustment for me, because that was, you know, when I was just living in my space, being like the only trans person that anyone knew in my little section of Brooklyn, you know,
right.
the last thing I wanted to do was have to tell people that I'm she, because it felt like backsliding. But now I'm not doing it for me. It's not about me. It's about creating a safer, more inclusive space for other people who need that.
Yeah, well, you know, it's also very polite of you. And again, I don't want to make it sound trite. It takes effort and energy and some inner strength sometimes to be polite when you don't want to be. When you think, can't you just do this or that? When you realize, no, this person needs some extra, so I've got I've got it in me to meet them halfway or more than halfway. Speaking for myself, I always am touched when I can sense that someone is running out of patience with me, and yet they're still exhibiting it. I can think, wow, they're being really nice right now, and I can tell I'm pushing them, and I'm not even meaning to. I'm just being difficult without meaning to. A lot of times that snaps me out of my own little headspace and makes me realize, you know what? Maybe you should show the same effort because they're making it. And that, I think it really does boil down to just kind of what you're modeling right now, which is be patient, be generous, be kind. We're all going to be fine if people can find it in themselves to be like that. We're not going to have any of these problems. You're just going to see that's another person. That's really all it is. It's another person standing near you. And how about being a human? So
it's funny too. The man catcher says, "I love the flood of, oh my God, why does Catalyst have to all be about being trans? There's nothing else to her character," which is so far from the truth, because Catalyst, there was a concerted effort from the start to make sure that the character was written to be multifaceted, and that, you know, and that being trans was front and center in her personality, but was not the only thing that defines her. You know, she has her friends group. She's in the goth scene. She's into witchcraft. She cares about the environment and, you know, and about her planet, and is fighting back against a major corporation. Like, there's a lot to her personality, and there's also the transness. Me, on the other hand, I feel like in a lot of these conversations lately, all I do is talk about trans stuff. So you could probably make that statement about me, but I think where that comes from is that, and this is probably the pressure that I feel, is that, like, knowing that moments like this can be really fleeting, that I feel a whole lot of pressure when I get handed that torch to try and carry it a little further. And so there's definitely part of me that's using, like, every moment, every little square inch of spotlight that I can get to talk about this stuff, because maybe I can help put some good into the world while anyone cares. Yeah, and again, you probably are going to do more of this than you want to do, but it's because, as you just said, you have it in you to go the extra mile for people. And I think that's what you're going to end up doing, is you're going to kind of go the extra mile so that the next person that comes along sits in your shade a little bit. And I'll be there if they forget to tell them, hey, don't forget Meli, okay? Don't forget that Meli had to answer twice as many of these questions as you're having to answer. Like, they're going to listen to me. I'm going to be living on a farm by then. I'm going to be, no one will hire an old man. Back in my day.
Hey, just back in my day. And here we said, oh, we're not going to make a big deal out about the trans thing. But as far as I'm concerned, if you want to talk about it, we talk about it. You're the guest.
Can I tell you, though, how much I love working on video games? This is my happy place. I love this so much. This particular game, I've heard you say it before, is incredible with how attentive they are to your vocal health and how unstressful a gig it is, despite being such a high profile.
This is the easiest game you're ever going to do, Meli. You're going to be absolutely spoiled.
I've had those 4-hour sessions where I'm just screaming and just destroying my voice for 4 hours. You know, I'm calling the agent and I'm saying, please, Friday, because I'm going to have to just be on vocal rest for 3 days straight after that. This
every time I get booked for Pathfinder, they book me for about an hour, and we never use that hour. We use 20 minutes of that as me just shooting the shit with them, and me dropping Pathfinder lines, because there's usually somebody new. Oh yeah, so-and-so is just joining the team, and I'll start hitting them with Pathfinder and watch them go, oh my God, that's Pathfinder. Yeah, it's just a big ego stroke, and it's the easiest damn lines to read, and there's hardly ever any shouting of any kind. And no, it's the greatest video game gig there is. So
game's so much fun though, and I very much feel like this is the space that I want to live in. When I've seen when I first booked, you mentioned this earlier, but I did that super healthy thing where I went and found like every interview I could possibly find with the actors, because there's part of me that wanted to see, like, learn what the experience would be like and what to expect, but then there was also the insecure part of me that was like, I hope these are nice people and they don't hate me. And I remember seeing in one interview, like, just listening to the crosstalk and talk about, like, oh, you worked on this, I worked on that too, I think I directed you for this. And it made me realize that there is like a little bit of a video game circuit.
Oh yeah.
Because I'll get an audition where there might be like 3 or 4 roles, but then you'll have like 150 quest givers and a whole bunch of soldiers, and like
Right.
whatever talent pool that gets pulled from, I'm trying to get in there because that seems like a whole lot of fun to me.
It is. Well, the environment has changed over the years because back in 02, 03, 04, I worked on a game. I think it's in my IMDb. I think it's EverQuest, or it might be EverQuest 2. They had so many roles that they literally ran out of voice actors. They were pulling people from every market they could think of. The game was vast, and I think I did 13 roles in it, and that was small compared to what some other actors did. There was a smaller talent pool, and by 03, 04, the talent pool was already exponentially larger than it was in the 80s and 90s. So you got to know casting directors much more, and there was also just more work because there were fewer people to fill the slots. And I don't want to downplay the booking of jobs I did then. I know I did a good job. That's why they booked me. But the amount of people that are in this business now is staggering. So, and yet, despite that, there are still directors you're going to run into over and over again because you're climbing this ladder and you've put yourself on another rung now. So you're going to have your work put in front of other directors, and I think you're going to start seeing some of the same names. But it is a much larger pool of humanity now. More games, more actors, all of that.
Something I've noticed now, and I'm realizing that we're overlapping a little now just because I think the video that I'm looking at is on a delay, so I apologize.
No, it's fine.
Something I've definitely noticed now is that when I'm looking to take a workshop or a class, I sort of find myself differentiating between the classes where I know I'm going to be worked and where I'm going to learn something tangible, and the classes where I'm mostly there to kind of like meet the person and do a little bit of networking.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say that there isn't something to be learned there.
Oh, there is.
But there is a difference between like trying to get into a Charlie Adler class and like meet the casting director.
Right.
But I kind of hate. There's part of me that I kind of hate the fact that it feels a little bit like pay to play. But I don't know necessarily what else to do sometimes in terms of doing my end of it. I think we have the same agency, and so we have, I have Chris and Aaron, Sam and Aaron and Brittany kind of hustling.
I'm with CESD. Yeah, we're both with CESD. Yeah.
I want to do whatever I can on my end too, but oftentimes that feels like I need to pay to get in front of someone, I guess.
There are so many ways to go about it, but I'll never forget, this was around 2000. I signed with KSA, this Kazarian Spencer and Associates, and Pat Brady was the agent there, and she has been my agent until she just recently retired. And Pat, in the beginning, I was just a stand-up comic trying to get off the circuit so I could stay in town and do video games and act, just any kind of voice acting I could find. And she said, I want you to go and take this workshop. And she said, and I'll never forget, she said, you're not going to learn anything, but you'll meet some people. And so it was that kind of workshop. And she was just blunt about it. She said, this is part of what the business is. They're not going to teach you anything you don't already know how to do, but this person will see you. And and it's completely valid because they don't have cocktail parties populated with casting directors that you can walk up to and introduce yourself to. You have to get in front of them any way you can. So it's all valid. Although, there are fly-by-night workshops that are going to promise you the moon. For anyone watching, be careful how you spend your money. There are hucksters out there. And now, if Charlie Adler does a workshop, you better damn well line up for that. Because that dude... I've had the pleasure of actually working for Charlie. I've been casting a couple of things he's directed. And he's just great. I mean, he's a performer himself. He's amazing, and he's a lot of fun to work with, all of that. And so I can just automatically sign off on if he's doing a workshop and you're trying to get in, take his workshop.
So I came up, since I had like a 10-year career between the time I graduated with my BFA and the time I jumped into the arts, I am often like, I've got the mindset of people. I'm like, I'm peers with people like 10 years younger than me. And then I've got the mindset of people 10 years ahead of me.
Right.
And so I went into this business still sort of having the training that I went through which was very much you go to college, you study the craft, you train, as much as you can, you find an agency, that agency gets you work. That's the whole career. And so I've struggled a lot now in this world where there's a lot of like guerrilla marketing that has to happen, and social media, and people are cold emailing studios to get on their lists, and like LinkedIning casting directors out of nowhere, which feels so invasive to me.
Yeah.
And I try so hard, and I have a few people that hold me accountable, but I struggle so much to do that side of things. Like, I don't have that Bob Bergen, like, I'll roll up at the bar and sit down next to them and like schmooze, and then I'll get a job out of it. I don't have those instincts. So the thing I can control, and this isn't me saying I can never get there, but where I am right now, the thing I can control is if you let me in the room, or if I know I have an email and you're expecting the email, I will follow through and I'll work my butt off. I've often told people that, when we get some of those callbacks for higher profile gigs where they'll want you sometimes to, be on camera, and you'll be with like a writer and a director and a producer. And they want to see you because it's just as much about seeing if you get along and can work together as it is about whether you're right for the role. If I can get in the room for those callbacks, I feel very good because I know that like I can be personable and I can be charming and I can, do a great job. It's all the stuff before that where I'm left to my own devices trying to pull my weight and like build something that I'm just lost so often.
Right. Well, you've already done half of the work. You've got a great agency working on your behalf. That's something a lot of people can't say. And like Bob Bergen, another person I know personally, and I've chatted with him on this channel. He's another guy that has workshops where he really knows his stuff, and he's one of those guys he'll be honest with you, he'll work with you, he'll tell you, these are some of the things you have to do. And he's always been a very hard worker, and he's been in this business since he was a teenager. And he's a little bit older than me, and we all run into the same wall. We all think, what do I got to do to get arrested? What do I got to do to let people know I exist? And a lot of it is just you're banging your head against the wall until the opportunity presents itself and you're ready. Now, the advantage you have is that you have a fine arts degree. You're trained. So I would bet that your craft at this point is fairly well polished. You're always growing and learning. But I would think that in an audition situation, I would take somebody with your skill set over somebody who was raw. That's got to be a huge advantage. Knowing
I
that
feel like I know what to do once I'm in the room. I just don't always know how to get the door open.
Getting the door open, a lot of this is, I've told this story before. I've had a wonderful career. If it ended tomorrow, I would have zero complaints. I've gotten a lot out of it, and I am blissfully happy. So I can tell you how I got to where I got to in a series of steps that seem like they're not connected, but they're intimately connected. So I get to be on The Simpsons. It's the greatest show of all time. I'm in my 13th season on that show. I get to do random voices, whatever they need. That's a lifetime dream gig. How did I get that? Pat Brady got me the audition for it. How did Pat Brady get me the audition for it? Well, she was my agent. How did she become my agent? Back in 2000, I was working on doing voices for a theme park ride at Universal. The producers of the theme park ride had worked with me because I had, long enough to know, okay, Chris seems to have some talent. He knows what he's doing. He's pleasant to work with. And they asked me, do you have an agent? I said, no, I'm looking for one. They said, we'll get you a meeting with Pat Brady. When I got the meeting with Pat Brady, I delivered on what she asked me to do, get her a demo. So how did I get to be on the theme park ride or working with those people? Well, 3 years before, I was working on the Spider-Man theme park ride that's at Islands of Adventure in Orlando. And they worked on that game and then carried me over to work on this theme park ride in 2000. How did I get the Spider-Man one? When I lived in Orlando, I built a reputation around town as being a guy who could do a lot of different voices. A production studio was working on the theme park ride, said, hey, can Chris come in and do some practice voices? Okay. That was in 1995 when I started building that reputation. Okay. How did I get the agency that got me the audition so I could build that reputation? In 1994, I picked up the phone, looked in the yellow pages because we had yellow pages back then. I cold called an agency and said, I would like to be represented. Well, come on in, we'll meet with you. So, why am I on The Simpsons in my 13th season? There are a lot of reasons. but in a series of steps, I can take you back to 1994, me picking up a phone that was attached to a wall. Okay?
And you know, the fact that you can tell that story backwards means
Yes.
that I know that it's true. That's usually, isn't that like a CIA tactic? They gotta make sure that you can tell
almost-
the story
it's
in
like-
any direction so they know you're not full of shit.
Exactly. It's like, look, if you think this was all luck, I assure you it was not. Now, opportunities present themselves all the time. Sometimes you're ready for them, sometimes you're not. When I finally got to sit in front of Pat Brady, I was not going to blow it. And when I finally got to go and audition to be on certain shows and certain projects that I knew were a really big thing, I knew that for my part, I was going to do my utmost because I had been building up to this moment. But I could see the series of moments that got me to where I am right now. And it wasn't, there's no secret sauce. It's just every time you're ready to slingshot to the new time, to your new place, if you've been putting the work in, and if your intentions are there, you're gonna get there. It'll be one little opportunity at a time, and you won't always see it until you step back.
You know, it's funny. When I first moved down to Dallas, and I'm in Los Angeles now, when I first moved down to Dallas to try and make this happen, and I'd never, played female roles. I was like looking at other actors, trying to figure out like where my voice fit in. And I went through this really, like, I'd been 10 years out. So I felt like over the course of the next couple of years, I started to slowly build back those skills that had been instinctual.
Right.
And those, my background, my training, my instincts that were like very, very rusty and covered in dust and cobwebs slowly start to brush that off and kind of find those things again.
It's a muscle. Yeah.
So if I look back, and I hope that I can always do this because it'll mean that I'm always growing. But if I look back at auditions from like 2017, oh my God, they're horrifying. I also went through this ugly phase where because I guess I lacked the self-assurance that I knew what I was doing, I would think about actors that sounded sort of like me. And so in my head, I'd be doing these auditions, bad mindset to have. But at the time, I would say like, okay, this is Meli Grant doing Wendy Powell doing this character. Because that was like my through line to figure out how to deliver that performance. And I was in a workshop with Crispin Freeman. And I was not out to him or anyone down there. I don't know, what he knew or didn't know or guessed or whatever, but it wasn't out to him. And I did my first character for him. He'll have everyone do 2 characters, and when he, once you do your first scene, he'll give you another one to work on in the meantime while he works with everybody else.
Right.
And he gave me this femme fatale character.
Mm-hmm.
And I just crashed and burned. It was devastating.
Right.
And I got this long lecture from him afterwards where he told me in his very crispin-y way, he's like, I don't understand why this isn't an archetype that you don't have mastery over with your voice. The voice and the pitch that you have, like this should be something that's in the core of your wheelhouse. I implore you to start working on this because you can be booking in this range. And thank God I took him seriously on that. I like to joke, although it's only half a joke, that over the next 5 years, I looked at a couple of actors like Amberly Connors and a few other actors that do really good sultry and smoky voices and just copycatted them for 5 years until I kind of found a way to do it myself.
Yeah.
And I had never I was afraid of that archetype. I barely knew how to play a female character to begin with, much less a sexy female character.
Right.
And I still joke that even though I very much want to get into PCAP, I'm kind of grateful I didn't do the PCAP for Catalyst because I can't move my body like that right now. But sure enough, I took it seriously and I put the time in over the next 5 years, and Catalyst is pretty sultry and it's pretty smoky, and it has a bit of that femme fatale energy. I wouldn't be playing this character if I didn't take that feedback seriously and start developing that muscle.
Right. Well, I noticed you did an interview. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it's on YouTube. And I think you mentioned, you said, look, this is really about my ego, but I said, can you please make Catalyst hot? Because I want her to be hot. And I get it. Like, I can't ask them that of Pathfinder. Can you make Pathfinder kind of studly? Like, that's not the character. But don't worry, Chris. You're pretty too, okay? So,
your research.
Yeah, but I remember you saying that, and I thought that's very honest. And Why not? Why not say that? You know, if you're going to make a character and if I'm going to identify with a character, can you make them hot and sexy? Can you make them femme fatale?
Eddie.
And they did.
To be fair. And I hate, this is kind of problematic. I hate that this is like, I don't have a much better way to say this because I don't like this language, preface to the chat. But I think there is a story, there's room for stories of characters who are like mid-transition or characters that, for lack of a more constructive way to say it, like look trans. And I think there's room for stories like that. Uh-huh. But my thinking with that, to try and turn it, it's very funny that you found that, into something constructive, is that I realize how easy it is for characters like this to kind of come and go and just be a blip on the radar. And you know, there'll be like one or two articles that say, hey, there's a trans character, and then we never talk about it again. And so I thought, I hate that this is kind of like, I sort of have to like play to the lowest common denominator here. But if you have a character who's visually compelling, who's super friggin' hot, then people are going to be drawing art. They're going to be making videos. They're going to be playing the character even when her kit isn't, you know, in the meta. And you're going to have this trans playable character like front and center for as long as humanly possible, so people are paying attention. And I think that the good there is going to outweigh the bad. You know, we totally don't owe people passing, and I think that stories like that are very important too. I think we're sort of in this place right now where like every single opportunity counts, and I'd love there to be a time where we don't even have to mention that the character's trans, and it'll just be a footnote, and that'll be healthy. But right now, when we do that, then no one thinks about it, or it becomes a debate and people doubt it, and it becomes like, you know, something that almost doesn't matter. It becomes something that like doesn't carry that torch forward or create momentum so we can tell more trans stories in the future. So whether we like it or not, I feel like we have to say it. And that was the other thing I said. I said she needs to be hot, and the other thing I said is we need to say it.
I'm sure this is
that she's trans and talk about her being trans, because that's kind of the necessary evil right now until it becomes a normal part of all of our storytelling.
This is not a community I know hardly anything about, but that must be a point of contention within it. How much should we lead? How much should we let it just be something that's another thing so people don't think of it and just accept it? But I'm sure there's an arc that you'll have to go through to the point where after a while nobody will bring it up because it just won't be it just won't be any kind of issue. But until you get there,
I'm bracing every day. Like I don't think I've ever said that Catalyst is a success and the fans love the character. I feel like every day I'm bracing and crossing my fingers that people continue to relate to this character and themselves in her, because and if you've been following me on streams, you've probably heard me say this too, but it's so easy when it comes to these critical, necessary, representative characters that we're so hungry for, that if one or two things is just slightly askew, it kind of feels like the whole thing is wasted, and like throw the character out and like, I guess it's a wash, we'll have to wait for the next one. And so this is only one version of a trans character, and it's not going to be one for one with every other trans person out there. And the stuff I'm saying here is not going to be stuff that everybody agrees with, because there's a lot of intersectionalism to this shit. People have different lives. We have different pain points and struggle with different things, just from one trans person to the next, before you even get to, you know, trans women of color, trans men, non-binary people, agender, cis, you know, gender fluid people all have different experiences and different struggles. And so she's not going to be a mirror of every trans person out there, but I hope to God that it feels authentic and that it resonates with people. So that's like, I feel like that's a continued internal tempest for me, is like every day I'm crossing my fingers that people still that the character still resonates and that we haven't gone astray somehow.
No, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but I understand how you might be feeling about it. This is a very new experience, and I have sidestepped virtually every single because Apex is a game that's not only very big, but it's been controversial for a lot of people because, why do you have all these characters that represent all these different things? I've seen that out there.
What we live in.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, look, we're
crazy, right?
Yeah, it's like we're just, look, we've taken it upon ourselves to tell a story that includes as many different journeys as we possibly can, and that apparently is controversial. So there's another game that's sort of the first wave to hit the beach, and after a while it won't be as noticeable. But in my case, I've sidestepped almost every. In fact, I think there has never been anything remotely controversial about Pathfinder because he's a robot. There's no talk of anything but he's a robot. And he's this wholesome robot. So I have never had any of this land on me. And so all I can do is I'll bring anyone from the game on that wants to talk about whatever they want, because the only people that don't like Pathfinder are people that just don't like positive, relentlessly positive people. And it annoys them. And I understand. I get it. But that's the only thing that's touched me. It's like, Jesus, man, why do you got to be so fucking positive all the time? It's like, if that's the worst I get.
You're telling me you haven't had a lot of blowback for the lack of representative casting?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of AI coming at me. I don't have a lot of robots, hate messaging me. So I figure, okay, I've got it the easiest. I think of everyone in this game, I think I've got the easiest. So I figure, you know what the least I can do? I also do this because I just enjoy it. I want anyone who's associated with the game to come on and talk about what it is they're dealing with or going through, because I see that some people do get it. Poor Allegra, I don't want to say poor Allegra. Allegra can take care of herself. But Allegra is knee deep in arguments over this stuff because Bloodhound is non-binary, and people want to keep saying, well, I'll bet Bloodhound is actually this or this. It's like, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck. I also feel like
Allegra throws down more often than I've been willing to.
I think that's that hot Latin Italian blood. I think she just likes a good scrap. I've told her this. I think you like the fight, but this is what the game has decided it was going to be. People conveniently forget that it is an exquisitely engineered game, and the gameplay. The fire rate on the weapons. I've fired different kinds of weapons. And let me tell you, when you fire the P20, the Mozambique, all that stuff, that feels, the action of it is incredible. All the other work they do, and people don't pay enough attention to that, to how good it is. So
I tell you, this is a brutal game. I've been playing for about 2 weeks now, and it is kicking my ass.
Oh, no, it'll eat your lunch. I still suck at it, and I played it for almost 4 years, and I'm absolute trash.
Love to play with you sometime. I'm doing my best to learn.
Well, if you want,
I texted Johnny too, and he said yes, but I know he's been super busy. But I'm always down to play.
Johnny's busy moving, and I can think of a cinder block joke I'd like to make about Johnny. You're gonna have cinder blocks in the new place, Johnny. Make sure you do that. That's like a feature of his old apartment. We used to kid Johnny. He's a very successful guy, and he's got damn cinder blocks with a board across it for like his coffee table. Like, come on, man. Clean it
Allegra
up, would you?
was actually one of the first people that knew, because I think that they did some amount of consultation with Allegra just as an advocate. Like they brought in as many people as possible, and ultimately they consulted with a number of trans women, trans developers that were on the team, and they consulted with GLAAD. But they wanted as many voices in as possible, and so I know that Allegra was part of that conversation early on. And thank goodness, because when I moved here, my housemate introduced me to her, and we spent like hours talking, and it was the first chance I had to actually gush about this stuff to somebody, and she was very quick to offer support and to say that the company, the dev team, the rest of the cast was looking out for me, and only as much as I feel comfortable, and if I need her to kind of like get in the way and like take blows and fight for me, she's more than happy to do that. It's been a really great experience so far.
Yeah, I see the messages she'll leave sometimes on the thread, and sometimes it seems like she's really exhausted. Other times it seems like she's kind of really savoring it. I think it's probably both. I'm sure she wants her experience of the game to be more than just taking on idiots who have a problem with her character. But I know also that part of her really seems to enjoy just helping get somebody's back. She's like that. I think that, if you're in a bar fight, I think you want a leg on your side.
She's been really incredible. And we're both Italian. And so I want to talk about the trans umbrella Italian voice actor conspiracy.
Yeah. Why you gotta be so in our face?
What's going on, Respawn? Why are you only casting Italian women to be your trans characters?
I remember talking to her. She was one of the first interviews I did. and she speaks Italian, and then I think we both tried a little bit of Spanish and all that, and she talked about just the different sort of cultures she has sort of roiling around in her, because I don't know if she's 100% Italian or not. I can't remember.
I think we're both half Italian, and she speaks way more languages than the one I speak.
Yeah, I'm learning Spanish, and I've been learning it for a while, and I'm still learning. I'll just put it that way. Estoy aprendiendo porque necesito aprender que mi esposa está hablando con mis hijos. So
Okay.
I don't know if
I
you
understand it like a kindergarten level, and I don't speak it at all.
Okay. You're not far behind me. I like to say I'm great if you want to talk in the present tense, but if you want to talk about what happens tomorrow or yesterday, it all breaks down.
You get a little bit of an advantage living in New York, and I'm sure in California as
Yeah.
well, but obviously like that's a far cry from being conversational at all. Usually
Right.
I just know when people are talking about me.
Yeah. If people slow down, I can get a lot of it. Like if they're willing to talk to me like I'm very new, then we'll get there. I can make myself understood and understand, but that's the other thing I like to learn. I like to learn a language because it's an instant connection to usually a culture, not always, but a lot of times it's an instant connection to an entire subset of society that you would have had no connection with before, or at least not on this level. And in Los Angeles, more people speak Spanish than speak English. And I thought, there's no excuse for me not to learn this, because I'm as gringo as you can get. And so for me to make the effort is also a way of, I also just think it's manners, you know, try to meet somebody halfway sometimes.
I think when I met with Allegra, this is the first time I heard she says that she thinks of herself as spicy white. And
Spicy
then I
white?
shared that with another friend who's a close friend of mine who said that that's actually an insult. And so I said, no, you know what? I think I'm going to reclaim that. I like that.
Spicy white?
Insult, no. I think I'm taking ownership of that as well.
Why? Well, I mean, sometimes people like to claim offense, and I'm thinking, well, you're going to have to tell me where it's coming from, because I don't know. And I'm the type of guy, when somebody says they're offended, I'm a comic. I can't be offended. It's impossible. I've heard every joke there is. My God, I've told every joke there is. It's all about the humor. But I do take one thing into consideration: intent. If a person has honest intent and somebody gets offended, it's like, well, could you cut them some slack? They didn't mean it. They didn't know. You know, it's when somebody's like really trying to get under someone's skin, that's when I say, don't be a dick, okay? But I don't know who would be offended by spicy white? Is it offensive to white people or to Italians?
It's probably offensive to Italians.
I guess, but I mean,
I take everything in stride. I was actually the person I was chatting with was some people know this now, but Margot, who's the other girl in the scene in our Last Hope trailer,
right?
Played by my good friend Angelika Panini, and they're one of my closest friends in real life, and they play my closest friend in the trailer as well.
Perfect. So there's no acting.
Yeah, no, it was. I was sobbing the moment that I heard their voice come out of the character. Nothing with my own. That was just me. The moment I heard them and heard us in a scene together, I was just bawling.
Right.
But all of you have been so incredible. The cast, the crew. I've now gone and I've gotten coffee and snacks with Ashley and Brett, who made the original concept art of Catalyst. Everyone's been so welcoming and so kind and so inclusive. And I was like that, new high school transfer, worried that no one would like me and that they'd be mean to me. And instead, everyone's been super, super wonderful.
Well, if you want, we can take some questions from the chat. It's been a while since I've done one of these where we actually interacted with the chat. But okay, just to be fair, Meli is new at the game. Probably can't tell you everything you want to know about canon or gameplay. She's on an arc of learning and getting more comfortable with the game. But if anybody has a question they want to throw into the chat, let her rip. McCream wants to know. McCream, by the way, McCreamy is her handle there. But McCream, do you know McCream's work on Twitter? She does really wonderful animations. So, and she'll take, in-game dialogue or sometimes us joking around, and she'll make it into a really funny computer animation. And so anything you say is Catalyst right now, she's probably going to turn into an
Please do
animation.
that.
Yeah,
I love,
so-
by the way, I love your character so much. I constantly joke and meme on your character when I'm in
really?
sessions. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, I don't care.
My joke, because I'm allowed to say this, I can make jokes about myself. My joke when I've gone into sessions that they say they can't put into the game, they think it's too spicy, is I want an interaction with Pathfinder.
Okay.
Again, I have a pass to make this joke. I want an interaction where Pathfinder says something like, "Hey, Catalyst, I hear that you've transitioned. I transitioned too. I used to be a waiter. Now I'm a detective."
Okay, that's great, by the way. People have been asking on the thread, hey, how come, as you may notice if you've seen the old interviews, I would at the end, I would do my character and their character interacting for funsies. And I cannot remember Respawn's official stance on that. I don't even think it's Respawn. I think it's EA, because the EA is very corporate. Like,
They're not like,
well, we don't know if you should do the blah, 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 the two characters is canon, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. At a certain point, I think I stopped it because I don't know if they liked it or not. But frankly, I also don't know if I give a fuck. So, maybe I'll just plead forgiveness later. So if you want.
one of my dear friends, Michael Tatum, in an interview once, I loved this, gets asked, like, have you played, so he's gay, and it gets asked, if you played any gay characters, and he just says, well, I'm gay, so as far as I'm concerned, all of my characters are gay.
Yeah, that's the inner life they all have.
Let's see. Do I have a favorite Catalyst line? I love all of them. I think my favorite is probably your favorite, which is, I am the grim trans witch your parents warned you about. But I also love, I think my favorite lately has been, oh, that wasn't a hex. You're just not very good. She has a couple of really cool burns, like, sorry, I don't have a crystal to help with aim.
See, that's what you'll notice. There's a lot of shit talking in the game. There's a lot of characters with burn lines and, color.
Meli, did you have any input into Catalyst's design? I did not, sadly. But I, like Chris, I'm sure, I toss them 1,000 ideas every time I'm in the studio, and they kind of just nod and smile.
Yeah, that's their way of saying, yeah, we're never going to do that, but keep bringing them. Yeah. So. Did
you get Catalyst in-game cosmetics for free? They hooked me up a little bit. I feel spoiled. I did get some. They hooked me up a bit. I got a little
bit of swag.
Tag, so everyone knows who to kill now.
Right.
They let me into the Respawn Club, which apparently there are like no actors in there. It's just me and a whole bunch of devs, but that's kind of fun.
There's a Respawn Club?
Respawn Club. You should talk to Alyssa and get yourself in there.
No, now I don't want to be in it because they didn't tell me about it. It's like, no, you have to ask me, otherwise I don't want anything to do with it. I'm practicing while we're talking.
Sarah, the head of both PR.
Yeah. You're welcome to grab your axe and practice with me if you want while we talk. So
I maybe some other time. I'm embarrassed.
No, well, it's all right. It takes a lot to embarrass me.
I'll handle your chat.
All right.
My question is, anything about the metaphysical occult? There's a little arrow in the way. How do I get that arrow out of there? There we go. Anything about the metaphysical occult, esoteric sides, anything at all? I don't know if that's a question. Try me again. I'm not sure what the question is in that. I'm a vocalist and I work with trans singers and music teachers, always working towards gender expansive vocal world. What's been your journey experience with your vocal coaching and otherwise? What's your thoughts on surgery? I have not had any kind of vocal cord surgery. I have heard very mixed things about how much it actually helps. What they do is there is a surgery where they can like tighten the vocal cords, but it is not, your mileage varies with that. I did all of my own vocal work. When I first transitioned, there were not a lot of YouTube videos out there, and I had maybe 3 people that I watched. I think they were like Princess Jules, Gigi Gorgeous, and a channel called like My Trans Life or something. Were like the only examples I had of other people out there telling their stories. And so I found a couple of really awkward videos about like how to like do a Smeagol voice, you tighten your voice really high, and then you go higher and higher and higher to kind of tighten the vocal cords, and then you relax and you go lower and lower, and you now have this, tightened vocal cords and resonance, but an open and airy sound, and little weird tricks like that. Now you can find videos where they talk about resonance and they're using like pitch things and they have catchphrases, and I've not been in that world very much, but I do think I had the advantage of being an actor and being able to treat it as if it were a character voice, and then work on it from there and kind of like challenge myself to stay in that character voice forever. And something that I think I can relate to Catalyst on is we pitched Catalyst up a little bit in the trailer when it's a flashback, which might not make a whole lot of sense considering if she's been through testosterone puberty, like her voice wouldn't be that much higher when she's younger. But I think that for a lot of trans people, they have this idea of what femininity or masculinity means to them, and they're constantly exploring it. And I had this phase early on where I was trying to be hyper feminine, and I was putting on a bunch of makeup and like wearing dresses all the time. And I have these embarrassing videos on my Facebook page of like talking like this, and I had this open like airy thing, and I had this idea of what I thought femininity needed to sound like, and then eventually I dropped it and realized that that wasn't me. And I think Catalyst went through a similar journey, which is probably why she sounds so much deeper and more confident by the time she gets to the games, as she realizes she doesn't need all of that to be who she is at heart. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I will say that anyone can work and develop their voice. There are a lot of really good resources out there I did not have access to when I transitioned, so I'm very envious of all the tools that are out there today. Super long answer. Let's see. You like the line about an enemy shows up and she can say she feels their bad energy, negative energy. Any other questions? Was the concept art of Catalyst different to what she was presented? She was very similar, actually. I think the first piece of Catalyst art I saw had the same tether belts. If you've seen that piece of art where she's up on the scaffolding, that was one of the first pieces of concept art for the character. So I think her face has changed a little bit. I think she was, weird phrase that I've gotten in the past, and it's kind of problematic, but I think she was a little more like ethnically ambiguous in some of the concept art. And so I'm sure that as they cast me and started working with me, they made her more definitively a white woman. But she looked very similar. In fact, the audition sides made me feel like it was very different at first because they had references listed, and the two references were Maleficent and Bayonetta. And so when I was looking at these sides, I got it in my head. I'm like, these are two English women, so they must want an English dialect. Like, they must want an accent. And I sent it through our agent at the time, Samit, and I said, do they want an English accent? What are they looking for? And they wrote back and said, nope, it doesn't matter, whatever she's comfortable with. So I did the very smart, very healthy professional thing of immediately second guessing them. And I thought to myself, wait, but it's only a trans woman, right? So the talent pool that they're reading from is going to be incredibly small. So of course they're going to say that they don't care because they don't want to unnecessarily slash the talent pool in half. Excuse me. But what if that's what they're hoping for? So I spent hundreds of dollars that week coaching on an English accent and auditioned in a bad, probably, English accent. And thank goodness I also included a second take that was my natural voice. And thank goodness it was enough to get me in the room for a callback. But what I originally submitted was so different from where we landed. And it was in the callback that they actually took me from this characterization that was this pompous, sort of like above it all, slightly detached, and had this English dialect. And they steered me right into the center of my comfort zone. So I went into the audition feeling like maybe I can do this. And by the time I finished and got out of the callback, it was, about as good as a callback could possibly go. To go into the room and have them take you and put you right into your most comfortable place as an actor. I apologize. I seem to have something in my throat and I keep wanting to cough.
No, it's okay. I'm just playing along, letting you do all the hard work.
Okay. But yeah, there was a moment where I thought that Catalyst was meant to be English, and thank goodness. Actually, you want to talk about like the telltale signs that you might be the one for the role. I remember being in the callback with Ashley Reed, the writer, Phil, who's the director. I'm still coughing. And I commented at one point and I said, I love this. I started as this sort of regal, like, English character, and now I feel like we're sort of in this Kate Kane, like, Batwoman or, like, Batman area that I love. And at the same moment, without missing a beat, Ashley, the writer, and myself both say, I am the knight. And then realize the other person said it and just dissolved into cackles. And I think that was the moment that I realized this might be the role. Because like I said, it's so much of it is about making sure that you're going to work together, you know, and especially with a role like this that kind of feels like joining the cast of a television show. Like, they want to make sure you're the right voice for the part, but they also want to make sure they're going to enjoy your company for hundreds of hours.
Robert Downey Jr. once said that years ago. He said, you know what gets you a part in a movie? If they want to be around you for 6 weeks. He said, that's what it boils down to. They want to be around you 14 hours a day for 6 weeks. That'll get you the part. That'll help. Which other Legends voice would Meli like Catalyst have interactions with?
Let's see. Let me not skip any real quick. Concept art.
Yeah.
Jane Vivian, any other trans characters in media you connect with? Gosh, there are so few of them. I played a character named Gamesoft in the Tome RPG that was originally played by Casey Mangelo in the animated series, and I adore that character. I love Jamie Clayton's character, whose name escapes me at the moment, in Sense8 is a fantastic story. Sense8 as a series, cut short before its time, was a phenomenal series, and I highly recommend checking it out on Netflix.
Yeah, crap.
What other legends? So what do we have right now? So we have Seer, we have Bloodhound, which would have been my first pick, so I'm glad we did that. We have Horizon, and we have Loba, I want to say. I want to see Catalyst interact with Caustic. That's really interesting to me because I have a feeling there are a lot of places they're not going to get along, but as two people of science who sort of have their own brew, they sort of each have their own brew they've concocted themselves. I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting places that they can connect on. And I think Caustic already has a line when he interacts with one of my structures where he says something like, I can see other applications for this anomaly or something like that. But I want to hear them talk as two people that sort of like brewed their own tools. I think there's got to be some interesting stuff there. I even saw early on there were some people wondering if Catalyst would be like Caustic's wife or something. So there's clearly, I'm not the only one that thinks that there's places that the two can connect. I am not Mela, I'm Meli, thank you very much. And can't you just wait for those group panels when we have Mela, Meli, Mela, Meli, Mela, Meli?
Yeah.
I was in the trailer with two Anjalis.
Yeah, I know.
Anjali Pamani and Anjali Kunapaneni. I'm so behind. What did I miss? What else? This might be a dangerous question that you may not be able to answer, but is Catalyst strictly women-loving women, or is she bi-pan? I don't know. I am bi. So in my head canon, so is Kat, but I don't know. Good question. I guess I should ask this question. Did you feel chemistry between Catalyst and Margot? What do you feel about that relationship? Do you all think that feels like like it could have been a healthy relationship, or would it have been a toxic relationship? Did you not feel chemistry there? I want to know what you guys think about it.
Yeah, and a lot of questions we'll get about our characters, sometimes the answer is we just don't know because the writers haven't told us. They have an arc planned, and we don't know. And we can, of course, never, if we do know something in advance, we can never talk about it. So,
I'm sure you've been here too, where like, I have to sort of remember, especially, and at least in my case, since this character is so close to home, I have to remember not to like insert my own life into Catalyst's story.
Right. I mean, obviously with me, I talk about Pathfinder, and I can still be emotional about a robot because Pathfinder has the personalities of the scientists that created him sort of infused into him. So he's not just any Marvin. He actually has a personality, and I can obviously put some of my own personality into that. That's what got me the gig. That and my voice, sure. But I have the blissful ability to instantly forget everything I record as soon as I'm done. It's like, oh, what's coming up into the new season? Even if I wanted to tell you, I done did forgot it.
Because you'll see those lines and then you say them 3 times and then you never see them again. So I often tell people, they say, can you say one of Catalyst's lines? And I'll say, if you type it to me and put it on the screen, I will deliver it.
You'll get to a point where you've said them enough where a lot of them will just be ingrained. I've played the game enough and I've said enough of them for like cameos. I don't know if you do cameo videos, but that can be a thing that you can do. So I've done enough of those where I can spit out half a dozen Pathfinder lines at any given moment. So
I'm hoping that I'm sure that it'll come as I say them. I'll kind of remember them. I'm looking at doing a Streamily signing.
Yeah.
In the next handful of weeks. I haven't actually locked it in stone yet. I had Color World approach me about doing like one-on-one meets, and that scares me a little bit. But I could see myself doing a cameo thing at some point. I'm sort of playing catch up with everything right now, and like the past couple of weeks have just been a bajillion interviews. And like once that starts to settle, I have to focus on getting things to sign printed, and it's just one day at a time.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do it all at once. It'll happen.
In your opinion, do you think Apex Legends should transition to a TV show in the future? Yes, please. I mean, I have no idea if they would do that, but I would certainly love it.
We're constantly badgering them, saying, "Hey, we're going to do a show. We're going to do a show," and they always say, "Oh, we don't know."
Would
I have no idea.
be a part of that? I don't know.
Yeah, we have no idea. I can't complain. Pathfinder has a freaking book, so yeah.
Chris, were you just playing Smoke on the Water?
Yeah, I was. Not well, but yeah, I'll play it again while you talk and see if I can get it right. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm sorry if this is a dodge. I don't know what she would say to Caustic. I would love to see what Ashley or any of the other writers write for me to say to Caustic. Really cool, though. One of the things I wished I'd seen in the trailer was that Iron Man moment. I think I was so envious of Erika Ishii's Valkyrie trailer of like I wanted to see her putting her suit together. There is one hollow spray. If you go in and look at Catalyst stuff, at the bottom there's a little hollow spray of Catalyst like soldering her backpack together. Really cool. We need more stuff like that. Caustic kind of seems like he would be a libertarian. Sure. I don't know. I believe you. You could say that Catalyst and Caustic have chemistry.
Chemistry. Yeah.
I love that he has that very dire way of delivering his lines.
The lovely and amazing J.B. Blanc as Caustic. Well, if you want, we can do a quick Pathfinder Catalyst back and forth. As long as it stays within canon, I don't think it's a big deal.
I will do my best. I am abysmal at improv.
Wait, you have a freaking fine arts degree. How can they have not done some improv in there?
I ran through my life every time I had an opportunity. I like reading
really?
words on the page.
Okay, well, then, all right, Meli's at a disadvantage here. She hasn't had enough time to sort of live in the character's head with lines and things like that, whereas me, I got a 3-year head start. So.
I'm waiting for the punchline. There's the improv always starts with a joke.
Does it? Yeah. Well, it's there are no expectations, and to put a finer point on it, I don't know when you would have auditioned to be Catalyst, but I auditioned to be Pathfinder in 2018. So, yeah, it was one audition and then one callback, and then boom, we were off. So, and I was recording lines for it. Now and it would have been like early 2018, I would think. So yeah, it's been almost 5 years that I've been
out last Christmas, like over the 2-week break, last holiday season. I immediately canceled the holidays and we did a rain check about a month later, but I stayed home working on that. They said that callbacks would be middle of January. So by the end of January, I assumed I didn't get it. And then sure enough, callbacks happened mid-February. I got the role like mid to late March, maybe early April. Okay. And we started recording mid-May. And as I'm sure you know, once we hit mid-May, we were recording like 8 hours a week for the next couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually didn't have to do that much. I didn't have to do a whole lot. They had, I guess, a certain amount. And, yeah, it's never been a heavy workload ever. It's
I guess I
awesome.
have to imagine that every new legend that comes in is sort of having to continue. They're piling on all the new things they've added over the seasons, and
I
we have to
think
account for all of that.
so. Yeah, I think you probably have a lot of catching up to do in terms of copy because I've already covered all these bases. I've had several seasons to do it. You've got all these weapons you've got to cover, which at the time we didn't have. We had some, and yeah, it was different. And I didn't have the advantage though of knowing what the hell the game looked like. They would describe the game to me. I had no clue. No clue. They would describe it and I would think, okay, a bunch of people getting into an area and they're killing each other. All right. I didn't know what the maps looked like. I think they showed me what the character looked like and that was about it. So
This is kind of a funny, like, life works in funny ways. And not to say that what I'm about to say is out of the question at this point. It might still happen. But back in the early, 2010s or so, whenever Overwatch came out, that game was incredibly important to me. And
yeah.
I remember just desperately wanting to be a part of that world and seeing the cast get on stage at conventions and like
Yeah.
the incredible relationship and family that they all seem to have. And I'm not itching to only play trans characters, so I would play any character that I could be. But certainly, if there was ever a trans character added to the Overwatch world, I remember thinking, oh, please let my career be in a place by then that it comes across my desk. And so the fact that that hasn't
Yeah.
happened yet, but the fact that this happened and it happened is wild, is surreal, it's life-changing, it's a dream come true. And in many ways it's everything and more that I hoped a character like that could be. It's I wasn't following Apex. I haven't played Apex until the past 2 weeks, but I knew about it and I knew what it represented. So like I said at the start of our stream, in about 30 seconds, I knew what I was auditioning for and felt
Yeah.
like the pressure of 8 worlds on my shoulders. And, I don't want to devalue myself as a performer, but, we read for hundreds and hundreds of things and
Yes.
you book this many of them. And oftentimes the roles that you see actors become known for and become their favorite, most iconic roles might not have been roles they have ever expected to get. And might not have been a role that they deliberately read for. And certainly if you want a role and you aim for it, you almost never get it. So every part of this has felt like a wonderful mistake.
Yeah, Pathfinder was one of several roles I read for that day. It was in a block of copy that I had. I did what I thought was appropriate for the character. Boom, moved on. Just a year or so before then, I had done some voice work in a movie called Passengers with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. And I'm the infomat in that. I'm this AI concierge that the characters interact with a little bit. And he's very helpful and he's very friendly, but he's not over the top. And that was me. And I thought, okay, well, I tend to get these AI auditions a lot. So I thought, all right, well, this one is super happy and he's a robot and he's super optimistic. So I'm just going to pump it up even more and go even higher energy. And that's what I did. And then I didn't think about it again. And that was exactly apparently what they were looking for. So yeah, you're right. You don't think about these things. You put the same effort you put into it as you put in likely everything else. Some things work, some things don't.
That's what makes this one so weird. I feel like I had all the wrong takeaways because I spent hours working on an English accent that week. I coached. I originally reached out to David Sobolov. I ended up working with Sarah Almale, and put so much time and effort into it and did all the things you're not supposed to do. Like oftentimes we like try to spend 5 minutes in audition, get it out the door and never think about it again. I obsessed over this thing.
Yeah.
And that's usually not going to work. It's
Right.
weird that it did, and I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, very much the case that oftentimes you don't get the things you aim for. It's better not to get attached because, it's not even a matter of whether you're good enough for the role or the fact that you're in the room means that I think this was a Jack Angel thing, means that you're world class and you're competitive enough to play that role, but you only have control over doing the best work you possibly can do. You have no control over what the voice that they're looking for is or what they had for breakfast that morning. So it's oftentimes, it's rarely if ever personal when you don't get the role. So it's better not to get attached. I got attached. For some reason it worked.
I try to think of in terms of what the casting director is going through. What if you heard 30 people read for something and you narrowed it down to 5 and 10 of them were brilliant, but 5 were a step above them. And then you're going to give it to one person, and that one person just fit. The other 4, you would have been blissfully happy to have them. And you would have been perfectly satisfied at having the other 5 beyond them, but you're going to give it to this one person for intangibles, things you simply cannot express, and yet they're going to get it. What do you tell the other 4 if you happen across them? Because the other 4 are going to think, I suck. Oh my God, where did I go wrong? And you think you did everything perfectly, but beyond your control, totally beyond your control. The one person who got it simply was what we were looking for. You 4, please don't stop. I want to see you again. I mean, they have to tell you these things because they're also true. But from our point of view, we're thinking, oh my God, where did I blow it? It's like, you didn't blow it. You nailed it. And the rest is not up to you.
And you know, often when I've heard those, like, why did you choose this one person? It can often be like this tiny little, like, almost intangible thing that suddenly connected. And in my case, I think they said that one of the things that stuck out to them was the way I played one of the jokes in one of the lines. That they felt like, for whatever reason, I got the joke in a way that a number of the other people reading didn't. And that one thing, like, stuck in their mind.
And can you honestly, you may not even know that it was something that would have happened regardless of what you prepped. It may have happened whether you prepared for it or just walked in and dashed it off going on complete instinct. But you're right. Preparing is everything. I personally don't like to over-prepare because then I think it gets a little stale. So I like to leave room for truly being in the moment and being as alert and focused as I can be, because I'm scatterbrained. If I'm over-prepared, my mind's just going to wander. So I find that just having a handle on it usually is enough to keep me exactly in the moment I like to be in. So
do you feel like now that you've been in the role for a while,
Yeah.
that you, very early on, I'm starting to feel this, and I've barely gotten into it. So now that you've been in a few years, do you feel like now that you've lived in the role for a while, you kind of just show up a blank slate and you know how to live in the body of that character enough that you
Yeah.
can just find it in the room?
Yeah, some of it's mechanical. I mean, and, you know, pardon the pun, but some of it is just the mechanics of it. And I know when you would have, I'm sure as part of your schooling, you would have done some theater. And so after a while, after weeks and weeks of rehearsal, you're in the headspace. You've got the mechanics of the character down, how they're going to walk, how they're going to talk, how they're going to stand, where the blocking is. Once you start hitting those beats, your brain catches up, and now you're in the headspace. For me, I have always been, maybe this is what attracted me to stand-up, maybe it got more honed from stand-up. I've always been very good at just picking up copy and cold reading it. I'm very good at cold reading, which is not to say I'm not better once I've had time to live with the copy, but I can go from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. That's just a thing that I can do. So I did a character in Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, like 20 years ago, called Peter Potamus. And
Peter has a very distinctive voice, but I can just sort of do it, right? But he's also got a distinctive personality.
And they said, Chris, you and Stephen Colbert, because Stephen Colbert did like one of the lead characters, the two of you get in a character faster than anybody else. Stephen Colbert just goes, ha ha, and he's in character. And then for me, I would just go,
Da-ha!
and I was instantly Potamus. No matter what I was doing.
Pitch pipeline.
What's that?
We'll call that like your pitch pipeline.
Yeah.
Something.
So, yeah, I for some reason, I can instantly get there, which is not to say that I'd be able to do that with every character, but for Pathfinder, they'll play you your reference line, and I go, okay, let's go. And I'm ready. So, but that's me. Everybody's different. Some people need that. They need a minute. You know, they need to get themselves into a headspace.
I'm responding to somebody who wants me to respond to them.
All right.
Hi. Whatever that means.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you. I got a hard out in a few minutes because Colorfinger, one of Colorfinger's friends, is going to deliver a piece of tech that will allow me to stream better because I don't want to stream on a PC. So Isn't that cute? He is on his way. Okay, gotcha. So we got 5 minutes before we wrap this up. If you want to do a quick back and forth, I tell you what, you don't even have to think of anything. You just be any kind of Catalyst line you want to think of. I can even do the one you thought of. Hey, Catalyst, I heard you just transitioned. So did I. I used to be a waiter. Now I'm a robot.
You know, that isn't really how it...
You're my new best friend.
You know what? I know you mean well.
I always mean well. You're my new best friend.
Pathfinder, let me ask you something. You are the Pathfinder.
Sure.
What kind of wisdom do you have for those of us just getting to the Apex Games and looking to leave their mark in this wonderful world?
Only one piece of wisdom. Careful, I may kill you.
Not if I don't get you first.
That's how best friends talk.
I want to see a Pathfinder Catalyst interaction now. You know what there's been our joke has been Catalyst is like, if you know these terms, is like the Tsundere legend, because she's come in so guarded and she has her walls up, both literally and figuratively. And so she comes in like this Kate Kane kind of Batwoman. I've got my grim witch persona. And then in all of the interactions, it feels like they're breaking down her walls. So she'll come in like direct and fierce. And then they'll be like, do you want to get tea sometime? And she goes, yeah, sure. I guess I could go get some tea. Yeah, let's do that. So, like, I wasn't expecting kindness.
You never know. You just never know. Robot Scarlet
fun.
like saying...
I'm looking forward to seeing all of the... Because they move the story along. And so it does seem like right now we're in this phase where I am not super trusting. And slowly her walls are going to come down. And she's going to be more one of the team. And actually, I'm really looking forward to seeing how her relationship develops with Seer. Because...
See, they'll surprise you. Like I said, you never know where they're going to take it. Like I'm fortunate in that so much of Pathfinder's story has been worked out. For the first couple of seasons, I used to constantly get asked, who's your creator? Are you ever going to find your creator? That was his raison d'etre. All right. That's if you get into the nuts and bolts of a performance, you ask yourself, all right, what does this character want? What are they always trying to get? If you break down a scene, you know this better than I do. What is each character trying to get in that scene, and how are things turning? The scene starts one place, but a good scene always turns. So what's Pathfinder's motivation? What's his drive? He's trying to find his creator. Well, that's been worked out. I've had this wonderful story arc that's already been worked out. I don't know if they have anything else planned for him because there's so many other characters, but nobody saw where they were going with it, how they answered the question of his creators. So with Catalyst, your guess is as good as anybody's where they're going to go with her, what's going to happen to her, what she's going to do, what she's going to become, how that's going to affect how you play her. It's an ongoing, it's a living, breathing part.
We've got some really good writers working for us and
we do.
making really deliberate decisions. And one of the things that made me so happy was in that trailer where they have their kind of Western standoff. And Seer tries to speak and Catalyst won't let him. I love that so many of the fans clued into that. There were one or two people that said, well, I guess Seer's the villain now, or I think Catalyst is a bitch. But a lot of people pointed out the fact that Seer looked like he was going to say something. Catalyst didn't let him talk. Like, we didn't get a moment here because she didn't let it happen. These two need to talk and hash out their differences. And I love that people are cluing into that because I'm right there with you. Like, there's a conversation that hasn't happened yet. I cannot wait for it to happen.
Yeah. Somebody clipped it and says, Pathfinder says trans rights. I guess, did I say trans rights?
I think that's the Catalyst response, I think, would be that to a moment like what you gave me, is that, like, I know you mean well.
I know you. Okay.
I love you too.
Well, Pathfinder would be for it anyway. Pathfinder wants everybody to be happy. So, yeah. Still Disturbing gifted Meli a sub. Thank you, Still Disturbing. You gifted Meli a sub to my channel. Oh, very nice of you. If you see, we have a sub goal. If we hit 100 subs by the end of November, then we're going to send postcards to everyone who has subbed to the channel. And we're going to design them together because we're a community.
This wasn't fate. This was the sub you gifted me. Thank you very much.
Look at that.
Thanks for the follow.
Yeah. And Sid, yeah, Eggiest boy is correct. Pathfinder's heart's in the right place. That's the thing. I'm always willing to cut anybody slack if I know they mean well, even if they trip up and say the wrong thing. It's like, I know. Don't worry. It's cool. It's cool. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Hey,
oh, Screaming Toller subscribed too. Hey, once you start your Twitch channel, because I know you're going to start a Twitch channel at some point, remember, it's all about the subs. Well, it's all about everybody, actually, but the subs actually help really keep the channel going because they give you that support. They give you that little bit of monetary support where you can do events and we can do sub challenges and things like that. So they support the stream. Look,
that was better for you. I feel like if Catalyst says it's all about the subs,
So yeah,
I feel like the internet's going to take that in a very different way.
it's all about the subs. All right, is sub a term that I should know but I don't?
Hey, thanks for the sub. You're my
I thought so. I have a lot of.
The chat knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, see, the chat knows. I am so clueless. I like to joke. Pathfinder is a walking dad joke, but so am I. There's so much stuff I don't know, you know. So I just try to keep up. Look, see, as soon as I start talking about subs, people start subbing, throwing it out there. Oh, look, and we're close to a hype train. Thank you so much for all these wonderful subs. Look, Svipavol is going crazy with the subs. They just gifted 6 gift subs in the channel. You are so cool, Svipavol. I wish I could pronounce your name.
Send my points right now to say I love Pathfinder.
There you go. Look, Angry Melly's on the chat.
Today. This was so much fun. I'm really glad we did this.
Oh, this is great. And look, you have an open invitation. Come back anytime. And if you want, we'll squad up. I have a feeling you're going to be better than me.
I will try my best.
Okay.
Yeah,
then
I've been, got to get the auditions in, got to meet the session times.
you got to.
But I am really enjoying this. So when I've had free time, I've usually been in the game.
Okay. Yeah, I usually restrict my gaming to the weekends, Friday and Saturday-ish. So, but yeah, we'll figure it out. If we're going to, we could squad up off stream just to get better, but I'm not going to get any better. So if you want, we can do it on stream so people can continue to ask questions and interact with you. And this might give you the momentum to go ahead and just say, hey, if you want a Chrisless stream, come to Meli's Twitch channel and, start her up.
Is that the ship name, Chrysalis?
Yeah, Chrisless, yeah. Just it's sans Chris.
Yeah, on stream, off stream, I would love to play anytime. And I know I've seen this question 100 times. I will do you the honor of answering it. I would totally do Catalyst hairstyle at some point, or at the very least, totally myself doing the blue streaks. When? We'll see.
I have Pathfinder's hairstyle, and I think it really works. I think I think it's me. It feels good. Daper, thank you so much for the gifting of the sub. You guys are awesome. I'm halfway to a hype train, but I never give a shit about hype trains on here. There's so much in Twitch that I still don't understand, but it's the wonder of technology. Anyway,
make sure that it's not going to be hate rated and a whole bunch of shitty people would be in there. I would love to stream. I've been talking to people about VTube stuff. I have a ton of questions. I am so I fall victim to decision paralysis constantly. So something will happen at some point. I just have 18 hours of research I still need to do.
That's okay. As they used to say in billiards, I used to work in a pool hall, one of my 15 jobs. You study long, you study wrong. Just, at some point, just start doing it and you'll figure it out. You're smart. You'll figure it out on the fly. And I don't know, if you get hate rated, then say, thanks for amping up my viewing numbers. Appreciate it, guys. I make money off that,
Yeah.
So, fuck them. Fuck them, and if they can't get along, so But yes, I don't know. Anyone messes with you, you let Uncle Pathy know, and we got your back. So anyway, and the mods will come out of the woodwork. I know there are plenty of people here that would probably love to be a mod for your channel. I'm sure they would like to. So, and that tech support's going to be crucial.
Yeah, especially because I know that I'm not going to have the wherewithal to like ban and moderate and blah blah blah. So yes, I am open to that conversation.
Yeah, my chat is usually really super chill. I mean, I've got real Pathfinder positive energy here. So I don't really, if anybody comes in with bad intentions, we usually clear them out very quickly. And I get very like Uncle Chris, Dad Chris with them. Like, dude, why do you want to be that way? Get the fuck out. You know, I sometimes will try to talk to them. It's like, all right, are you having a bad day? Let's open up. Let's talk for a minute. But if they're just trolling, it's like they're out. We don't play that here. But anyway, yeah, a lot of it is just the vibe. Your vibe is going to be super chill anyway, so I don't think it's going to, you know. I think it'll be a place a lot of people treat as a sanctuary. That's my guess.
I try to be as accessible as possible, and like I feel like I'm playing with fire because we've all been here before. But you know, as far as I'm concerned, until people take that for granted, I try to be as accessible as I can. You know, and I've looked at a number of the Legend announcements prior to this. I looked at Erica's when they announced Valkyrie, and I really admired how present they were with the community, and I'm trying my best to live up to that. I kind of steal from a friend of mine, like even I'm doing everything I can to earn this now that I'm here.
Yeah, well, and there it is. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. So folks, you know what, we should raid. This is the other thing about Twitch. I always try to raid somebody when I'm done. So I like to take this lovely audience and give them another channel to go to. And it's like this wonderful little gift you can give another stream. They're doing their thing, and then a raid comes out of nowhere, and they got a few dozen people in their channel. And it's like this nice little gift. I always love that. So if anyone, Colorfinger, do you have any raid targets before your buddy shows up here? And so what I do is I just type in /raid and then their channel ID. And then everybody who's on here who wants to go, I click a button and they all show up in that person's stream. So in case you were not aware that how that works, you might have already known. You fixed computers for years, so I have a feeling you understand much more about this than I do.
I'm familiar with the rating thing. When I used to dabble in streams, I always forgot and then would just end. So it's something that I'll have to catch up on. Okay,
gotcha. All right, so that you knew. So forgive me for repeating shit you already knew.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But I bet also as you're in that world and as you make, you know, as you build relationships with other streamers, you'll have a list of people. So you're not like, wait, who do I don't know. Where do I?
Yeah, I do like to leave it up to my mods because a lot of times there'll be somebody we like to raid, but they're not on. So they'll go out and find somebody. And usually we almost always want it to be a small streamer, somebody who could use the extra views. But also a lot of times what we like to look for is, are they chill? Are they positive? Are they friendly? We like that. I don't like to send people to a toxic stream. So, you know. Yeah, Robot Scarlet says, you don't always need to raid. Yeah, you don't ever have to. I just like to. That's me. Oh, look, we got a hype train emote.
I heard a knock on my door. I know we're about to wrap anyway, but give me like 20 seconds. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah, I'm typing in a raid target here. Okay, it's going to be Novi. That's who we will raid. Thank you so much, everybody. We're not going to go yet, so please don't leave. I know you want to, but you got to say goodbye to Meli. Meli's almost back. All right.
I stream in my pajamas. How about you?
Nah, jeans.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, what a slob. Yeah.
You can probably still find the VODs of it on my YouTube page. You can find me on YouTube, but I used to do when I was streaming to like 4 people, I would just have like a giant, ugly, oversized sweatshirt on, and I would like order takeout, and it would just be like me eating dinner in an ugly sweatshirt, playing video games and chatting.
It's real life. That's what people like. They like it when it's a little bit curated. I got a semi-interesting background, but you do you. Thank you, Bat Show. More gifted subs. We're 80% to our goal, folks. You guys are awesome. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to take all the love and we're going to redirect it and transfer it over to Novi, who I think we've rated before, but I'm sure they're wonderful. And all I can say is thank you, Meli. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. And welcome to the cast. Welcome to this world. And we're going to do our best to continue that positive vibe. So Catalyst is here. Meli is here. And let's enjoy the game together, right? It's all we have to do.
Thank you, chat. And this has been an incredible experience, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. And for all of you folks out there, love you, mean it, be good to yourselves, be good to other people, and go forth and be wholesome and say hey to Novi. I have created the raid. I expect you all to be there, by God, and on your best behavior. 33, 37 viewers, 40. Come on, there are 50. I know we need to hit at least 50. 43, 44. Look at that. All right, 44 viewers. Guys, love ya. Be well. And the raid is on. I am